Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Horror Halloween. Now I know a lot of you use these videos to sleep, so before you drift off, I thought it would be a fun idea if everyone can leave a comment to let me know where you're listening from in the world. Also like and subscribe if you are enjoying the episodes. Nestled in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, Hollow Creek Manor stood as a haunting reminder of a bygone era. The manor, built in the early 1800s, was known for its stunning architecture, sprawling grounds, and a history steeped in mystery and tragedy. Over the years, tales of a family curse and restless spirits had transformed the once grand estate into a place of fear and intrigue. Curiosity drew a small group of friends, Maya, Ben, Julia, and I, to the manor one crisp autumn evening. As we parked the car at the end of a winding gravel road, the setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, casting long shadows across the landscape. Are we really going to do this? Maya asked, looking at the manor with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Come on, it's just a house. What could possibly go wrong? Ben replied with a smirk. It'll make for a great story. As we stepped out of the car, a chill swept through the air, making me shiver. It's just the wind, Julia said, though her voice betrayed a hint of nervousness. Let's get this over with. We walked up the creaking porch steps, the wooden boards groaning under our weight. The grand double doors swung open with an eerie creak, revealing a dimly lit foyer adorned with faded wallpaper and dusty chandeliers. An unsettling silence enveloped us as we crossed the threshold, the air thick with history. I can't believe people used to live here, I said, glancing around at the peeling paint and cobwebs. Yeah, it's like a time capsule, Maya replied, her flashlight illuminating the walls adorned with portraits of stern-looking ancestors. I wonder what happened to them. Ben wandered toward the staircase, his curiosity piqued. Let's check out the second floor. I heard that's where most of the spooky stuff happens. As we ascended the staircase, the air grew colder, and the atmosphere shifted. Each step seemed to echo with the whispers of the past, as if the house was alive with memories long forgotten. At the top of the stairs, we found a long hallway lined with closed doors, each one hiding its own secrets. Which room should we explore first? Julia asked, peering down the corridor. How about that one? Maya pointed to a door at the end of the hallway, slightly ajar and shrouded in shadows. With a shared nod, we approached the door, pushing it open cautiously. Inside, the room was dimly lit by a single beam of moonlight streaming through a cracked window. Dust motes danced in the light, creating a ghostly ambience. An ornate four-poster bed stood against one wall, draped in tattered lace curtains. This place is amazing, Ben said, running his fingers along the dusty furniture. It's like stepping back in time. I moved to the window, looking out at the expansive grounds. It must have been beautiful here, I mused. But my words were interrupted by a soft, sorrowful whisper that seemed to drift through the room. Did you hear that? Maya asked, her eyes wide with fear. Hear what? Julia replied, glancing around nervously. Just listen, I urged, straining to catch the faint sound that echoed through the air. After a moment, it came again, clearer this time. Help us, remember? Okay, that's creepy, Ben said, his bravado faltering. Maybe we should get out of here. No, wait, I said, curiosity overwhelming my fear. What if it's a message? We should find out what it means. Are you serious? Maya whispered, glancing nervously at the door. Let's look for clues, I suggested. If there's a story to uncover, we can't just leave it. Reluctantly, the others agreed, and we began searching the room for anything that might help us understand the haunting whispers. Julia rifled through the drawers of the nightstand, while Maya examined the old wardrobe. Guys, come look at this, Julia exclaimed, holding up a dusty, leather-bound journal. I found something. What does it say? Ben asked, leaning in closer. As she opened the journal, we crowded around her, our hearts racing with anticipation. The pages were yellowed with age, and the handwriting was elegant but shaky. Julia began to read aloud. October 12, 1843. Today, I witnessed a terrible tragedy. My sister, Eliza, has fallen ill, and the doctor says there's nothing more he can do. Our family is falling apart, and I fear the darkness that has taken hold of this house is to blame." "What darkness?" Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Julia continued, her voice trembling. October 15th, 1843. Eliza's condition worsens. I found her speaking to someone in the dead of night, a man I've never seen before. I fear she is being lured away by the shadows that dwell in these walls. "That sounds like something out of a horror movie," Ben said, shivering despite himself. "Keep reading," I urged. October 20th, 1843. Eliza has vanished. I searched the manor, but she is nowhere to be found. Our family has been cursed, I am sure of it. If anyone finds this journal, know that the spirits of Hollow Creek Manor are restless, and they must be remembered. The room fell silent as we processed what we had just heard. "Eliza disappeared?" Maya said, her voice quaking. "It sounds like her spirit is still here," Julia replied, looking around nervously. "We need to find out what happened to her." "What do you suggest we do?" Ben asked, glancing at the door as if expecting something to come through. "We need to explore the rest of the manor," I said, feeling a surge of determination. There must be more clues hidden here. With renewed purpose, we left the bedroom and made our way down the hallway, the air growing heavier with each step. The whispers became more pronounced, urging us to continue. We entered another room, this one decorated with faded floral wallpaper and a large antique mirror. The atmosphere felt charged, and I couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. As we examined the room, I felt drawn to the mirror, its surface cloudy and covered in dust. "Is it just me, or does this mirror feel different?" I asked, glancing at my friends. "Different how?" Ben replied, stepping closer. "Like it's holding something back," I said, running my fingers along the frame. As I peered into the mirror, I felt a sudden chill, and the reflection flickered. For a brief moment, I saw a figure standing behind us, pale and ethereal, with long dark hair and a flowing white gown. My heart raced and I turned quickly, but there was no one there. "Did you see that?" I gasped, turning back to the mirror. "See what?" Maya asked, confusion etched on her face. "There was someone in the mirror," I stammered. "Okay, now I'm really freaked out," Julia said, taking a step back. "Maybe we should leave." "Not yet," I insisted. "We have to figure out what's going on. Eliza's spirit is trying to communicate with us." The whispers grew louder, merging into a haunting melody that seemed to echo through the walls. "Find me. Remember me." With a deep breath, I approached the mirror again, feeling a connection to the spirit that had appeared. "What do you want from us?" I asked aloud, hoping for a response. The air shimmered, and the whispers intensified, forming coherent words. "Find my sister, before it's too late." "What sister?" Ben asked, looking bewildered. "Eliza," I said, realizing the urgency in the voice. "We need to find out what happened to her." Maya grabbed my arm, her grip tight. "Okay, but where do we even start?" "Let's check the library," Julia suggested. "There might be records or books that can help us." We quickly made our way to the library, a grand room filled with towering shelves of books, many of them covered in dust. A heavy silence hung in the air, broken only by the sound of our footsteps. "Start looking for anything related to the Ashford family," I said, glancing over the titles. "Maybe there's something here that explains Eliza's disappearance." As we searched, I stumbled upon an old family tree hanging on the wall. It was beautifully illustrated, but marred by fading ink. I leaned in closer, tracing the names with my finger until I found Eliza's. "Guys, come look at this," I called out, pointing at the family tree. "What did you find?" Ben asked, stepping closer. "Eliza Ashford, and here." I pointed to a name below hers, Margaret Ashford, her sister. "Margaret?" Maya repeated. "Do you think she's the one who wrote the journal?" "I think so," I said, excitement bubbling within me. "If we can find out what happened to Margaret, we might uncover the truth about Eliza." "Let's keep looking," Julia said, scanning the shelves for more clues. Just then, Ben called out, his voice echoing through the library. "Guys, I found something." We rushed to his side as he held up an old, dusty book. "It's a diary," he exclaimed. "Open it," Maya urged, leaning in to get a better look. Ben carefully opened the diary, the pages. In the depths of an ancient forest, shrouded in mist and mystery, lay Blackwood Hall, a sprawling mansion steeped in tales of sorrow and despair. Built in the late 1700s by the wealthy Blackwood family, the mansion had once been a place of grandeur, filled with laughter and elegance. However, as the years passed, tragedy befell the family, leading to whispers of a curse that haunted the halls and drove visitors away. It was a crisp autumn evening when a group of friends, Elena, Mark, Sarah, and I, decided to explore Blackwood Hall. We had heard stories about the mansion's dark past, but curiosity propelled us forward. The sky was a canvas of deep blues and purples, the leaves crunching underfoot as we approached the foreboding entrance. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked, glancing back at the path we had traveled. "Come on, it'll be fun. Just think of all the ghost stories we can tell later," Mark replied, his enthusiasm infectious. I pushed open the heavy front door, its hinges creaking like an old ghost. The air inside was thick with dust and a sense of foreboding. Our flashlights flickered across the grand foyer, revealing ornate moldings and a massive staircase spiraling into darkness. "Wow, this place is incredible," I said, trying to mask my unease. "Look at those chandeliers." Elena nodded, her eyes wide with wonder. "Imagine the parties they must have had here." As we stepped further into the mansion, a chill crept through the air. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. We began to explore the various rooms, each more dilapidated than the last. Faded portraits adorned the walls, the subjects gazing down at us with sorrowful eyes. "Let's check out the library," Mark suggested, leading the way. The library was a grand room filled with shelves lined with dusty books, their spines cracked and faded. A massive fireplace loomed at one end, its hearth cold and empty. As we began to sift through the books, I noticed an old journal resting on a nearby table. "Hey, look at this," I called, flipping it open. "What does it say?" Sarah asked, moving closer. The handwriting was elegant but shaky. "April 3rd, 1825. My heart is heavy with grief. The shadows of this house have claimed my brother, Thomas. He vanished without a trace, and I fear he is lost to the darkness." "What happened to Thomas?" Elena asked, a hint of apprehension in her voice. I continued reading. "April 10th, 1825. I can feel the house closing in on me. My sister, Margaret, believes she has seen him in the garden, but I know the spirits of this place are playing tricks. I cannot trust my own mind." As I read, the atmosphere shifted, a cold breeze sweeping through the room. "This is creepy," Mark said, glancing around. "Do you think this is really about a curse?" "It sounds like it," I replied, feeling a chill run down my spine. "We need to find out what happened to Thomas and the rest of the family." With that, we decided to explore the garden, where the journal mentioned strange occurrences. We stepped outside into the overgrown courtyard, the moonlight illuminating the wild foliage. An ancient stone fountain stood in the center, its once clear water now stagnant and filled with debris. "This place is beautiful in a haunting way," Elena remarked, peering into the fountain. Suddenly, I felt a prickling sensation at the back of my neck. "Did you hear that?" I asked, straining to listen. "Hear what?" Mark replied, looking confused. "It sounded like whispers," I said, feeling an unease wash over me. "I swear I heard someone calling out." "Maybe it's just the wind," Sarah suggested, but her voice lacked conviction. As we moved deeper into the garden, we stumbled upon a weathered statue of a woman, her face twisted in anguish. "This is unsettling," I said, feeling drawn to the statue. Mark approached it cautiously. "Maybe there's a plaque or something that explains who she is." I stepped closer and noticed a small inscription at the base. "To dear Margaret, forever lost to the shadows of Blackwood Hall. Margar, wait, that's the sister from the journal," Elena exclaimed, her eyes widening. "The one who thought she saw Thomas," I replied, feeling a sense of dread. What if they both disappeared? We continued to explore, our flashlights casting eerie shadows across the garden. As we wandered, we began to hear faint whispers again, intertwining with the rustling leaves. Help us find the truth. Okay, that's it. I'm getting creeped out, Mark said, his voice trembling slightly. Maybe we should leave. Not yet. We need to understand what happened here, I insisted, feeling an overwhelming urge to uncover the mansion's secrets. Reluctantly, the others agreed, and we made our way back inside. The whispers intensified as we entered the main hall, a low hum that seemed to resonate within the walls. Let's check the attic, Sarah suggested, her voice firm. If there are any secrets left, it has to be up there. We climbed the narrow staircase leading to the attic, each step echoing with the weight of history. The air grew colder as we reached the top, and the door creaked ominously as I pushed it open. The attic was filled with cobwebs and forgotten treasures, old trunks, moth-eaten clothes, and dusty furniture. In one corner, I spotted a large trunk, its lock rusted but still intact. Maybe there's something inside, I said, moving closer. As I knelt to examine the trunk, I noticed a strange symbol etched into the wood. Guys, look at this. It looks like a family crest. What do you think it means? Elena asked, glancing over my shoulder. I'm not sure, but it feels important, I replied, running my fingers along the crest. Let's see if we can open it. With a bit of effort, I pried the trunk open. Inside, we found a collection of letters, each one yellowed and fragile. These must be from the family, I exclaimed, lifting one carefully. What does it say? Mark asked, leaning in closer. I unfolded the first letter and began to read. Dearest Margaret, I fear for our family's future. The shadows grow stronger, and I can sense something watching us. Thomas believes it is a curse, but I cannot accept that fate. As I continued reading, a deep sense of sorrow enveloped us. This is so sad, Sarah said softly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I read on, feeling the weight of the family's despair. I cannot remain here any longer. I must escape this house before it consumes me. If you find this letter, know that I loved you until my last breath. Did they ever escape? Elena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't think so, I replied, closing the letter with a heavy heart. They were trapped in this place, just like we are now. Just then, the whispers returned, more insistent than ever. Remember us. Help us. What do you want from us? Mark shouted, frustration and fear mingling in his voice. The air grew thick with tension as the shadows in the attic deepened. Suddenly, the trunk slammed shut, startling us all. Okay, that's it. I'm done, Mark yelled, turning to leave. No, wait, I said, feeling a pull to stay. We have to help them. There's a reason we're here. Help who? Sarah asked, looking bewildered. The family, I replied, my voice rising. They're trapped here, and we need to uncover the truth to set them free. With a shared look of determination, we began to search the attic more thoroughly, hoping to find a clue that would help us understand the family's curse. As we dug through old clothes and dusty furniture, I stumbled upon a small, ornate box tucked beneath a pile of linens. Guys, come here, I called, my heart racing as I opened the box. Inside was a delicate locket, its surface engraved with the same crest I had seen on the trunk. This is beautiful, Elena said, picking it up gently. Look, there's a picture inside, I said, holding it up for everyone to see. The photograph was faded, but I could make out the faces of a man and a woman, Margaret and Thomas. Do you think this belonged to them? Sarah asked, her eyes wide. It must have, I replied, feeling a rush of emotion. This locket symbolizes their love and connection. The whispers grew louder, swirling around us like a tempest. Remember, find us, set us free. We have to find a way to release them, I said, looking at my friends. If we can uncover the truth behind the curse, maybe we can help their souls find peace. We hurried back down to the library, determined to discover the final pieces of the puzzle. As we sifted through the letters and books, we stumbled upon a weathered tome that caught my eye. This might be it. I said, pulling it from the shelf. The book was titled The Curses of Blackwood Hall, and its pages were filled with dark tales and warnings about the mansion's past. What does it say? Mark asked, leaning in closely. It talks about hidden deep within the misty valleys of the English countryside, Wraithwood Manor loomed like a forgotten titan of stone. Its turrets pierced the fog like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky, and its once proud facade was marred by creeping vines and cracked stones. The estate had been abandoned for decades, yet tales of its haunted history lingered like shadows, inviting the brave and the foolish alike. The story of Wraithwood began in the late 1800s with the illustrious Dr. Alastair Wraithwood, a physician known for his radical treatments and controversial methods. He had been a man of great ambition and talent, but his brilliance came at a terrible cost. The townsfolk whispered that Dr. Wraithwood had delved too deeply into the occult, seeking forbidden knowledge that would ultimately bring ruin to his family. On a chilly autumn evening, I gathered my friends, Liam, Zoe, and Alex, to explore the manor. Our plan was simple: enter the estate, uncover its secrets, and leave before dawn. Armed with flashlights and an old map I had found in the town library, we set off down the winding path leading to the mansion. As we approached, the air grew heavy with an eerie stillness. The wind rustled the leaves, creating a haunting symphony that seemed to echo the whispers of the past. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" Zoe asked, eyeing the looming structure. "Come on, it's just an old house," Liam said, his bravado evident. "What's the worst that could happen?" Famous last words, I muttered under my breath as we stepped onto the creaking porch. The front door swung open with a push, revealing a darkened foyer filled with dust and the scent of mildew. Shadows danced along the walls, and the air felt thick with history. "This place is even creepier than I imagined," Zoe whispered, gripping her flashlight tightly. "Let's split up and cover more ground," Liam suggested, always the thrill seeker. "We can meet back here in an hour." Reluctantly, we agreed. I paired up with Alex, and together we ventured into the heart of the manor, leaving Zoe and Liam to explore the upstairs. As we wandered through the dimly lit rooms, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The walls seemed to absorb our footsteps, and every creak of the floorboards echoed like a warning. We entered the drawing room, where the remnants of opulence lingered: tattered curtains, faded portraits, and furniture draped in dust. "Look at this," Alex said, pointing to an ornate table adorned with dusty trinkets. Among them was a small, intricately carved box. I picked it up and examined it closely. "Do you think it's a music box?" I asked, turning it over in my hands. "Only one way to find out," Alex replied, a mischievous glint in his eye. Carefully, I opened the box, revealing a delicate mechanism inside. I turned the key, and the faint notes of a melancholy melody filled the room. The sound seemed to awaken something in the house, and a chill swept through the air. "Do you feel that?" I asked, shivering. Before Alex could respond, the music abruptly stopped, and a sudden gust of wind swept through the room, slamming the door shut behind us. We exchanged panicked glances. "Maybe we should go back and find Zoe and Liam," I suggested, my heart racing. As we hurried toward the door, the room grew darker, and shadows began to swirl around us. The whispers returned, echoing off the walls. "Help us, free us. What is happening?" Alex asked, his voice trembling. "I don't know, but we need to get out of here," I exclaimed, flinging open the door and racing down the hallway. We stumbled into a small study, cluttered with books and papers strewn across the floor. I spotted a fireplace, its mantel lined with photographs of the Wraithwood family: Dr. Alastair, his wife, and their 2 children. Their faces were gaunt, and their eyes seemed to follow us. "This is unsettling," Alex murmured, stepping closer to the photographs. "It's like they're warning us." "I think they are," I replied, scanning the room for any other clues. "We need to understand what happened to them." I noticed a weathered book lying open on the desk. As I approached, I realized it was a diary. "Alex, come look at this," I called. He hurried over, peering over my shoulder as I read aloud. "November 2nd, 1885. The darkness has descended upon our home. My husband, Alistair, has become consumed by his experiments. He no longer speaks of the family. All he cares for are his twisted notions of immortality. I fear he has awakened something malevolent. What does that even mean? Alex asked, frowning. I flipped to the next page, my heart racing. November 10th, 1885. The children have started to see shadows in the hallways. They speak of whispers calling their names. I have tried to reason with Alistair, but he is too far gone. If anyone finds this diary, please warn them. Wraithwood is cursed. The atmosphere thickened with dread. We need to find Zoe and Liam, I said, closing the diary with trembling hands. No, wait. There's something else, Alex said, pointing to a tattered piece of paper tucked between the pages. I pulled it out and unfolded it carefully. It was a map of the manor, with several rooms marked in red. These must be important, I said, tracing the lines. Let's check the ones marked, Alex suggested, glancing nervously at the door. We followed the map, making our way through the maze of corridors until we reached a door at the end of a dim hallway. This is one of the marked rooms, I said, pushing it open. Inside, we found a small nursery filled with dust-covered toys. The air was heavy with sorrow, and the faint echoes of laughter seemed to linger. I felt a pang of sadness as I wandered deeper into the room. Look at this, Alex said, pointing to a wooden rocking chair that swayed gently, though no one was near it. Okay, that's creepy, I muttered, my skin crawling. Suddenly, a soft giggle filled the air, causing us both to freeze. Did you hear that? I whispered, my heart racing. Yeah, Alex replied, eyes wide with fear. Let's get out of here. As we turned to leave, the door slammed shut behind us. Panic set in, and I pulled on the handle, but it wouldn't budge. We're trapped. I shouted, calm down. We need to find another way out, Alex said, looking around desperately. The giggles grew louder, morphing into high-pitched laughter that echoed through the room. Help us, play with us, the voices chimed. Who are you? I cried, trying to sound brave. We are the Wraithwood children, they replied in unison, their voices swirling around us like a gust of wind. Why are you here? Alex asked, his voice shaking. To find the truth. To break the curse, the voices echoed. We need to find your parents, I said, feeling an inexplicable connection to these lost souls. Help us remember, the children cried. In a moment of clarity, I realized what we needed to do. We have to find their father's last experiment. It must be the key to breaking the curse. As if the house itself responded, the door creaked open, allowing us to escape. We sprinted down the hallway, retracing our steps back to the study. Where would he have kept his experiments? Alex wondered. Maybe the cellar, I suggested, recalling the layout from the map. We raced to the basement door, the air growing colder as we descended the creaky stairs. The basement was dimly lit, filled with old crates and forgotten memories. In one corner, I spotted a locked door with strange symbols carved into the wood. Do you think this is it? I asked, feeling a mix of dread and excitement. It has to be, Alex replied, stepping closer. We searched the room for something to unlock the door. Just then, I spotted a crowbar sticking out from under a pile of debris. I grabbed it, my heart pounding as I approached the door. With a firm shove, I pried the door open. Inside, the room was filled with strange equipment, jars of preserved specimens, and an ominous feeling of dread. In the center of the room was a table covered in dusty cloth, and I felt drawn to it. As I pulled the cloth away, I gasped. It's a contraption of some kind. Looks like a machine for experiments. What kind of experiments? Alex asked, peering closer. Dr. Wraithwood was trying to merge the realms of life and death. I realized, flipping through the scattered notes on the table. He believed he could bring back the dead. Sounds like he was dabbling in things he shouldn't have, Alex murmured, glancing around nervously. Maybe he unleashed something he couldn't control, I said, piecing together the story. Do you think this is what caused the curse? Alex asked, a hint of fear in his voice. It has to be, I replied, examining the notes. If we can find a way to reverse it, maybe we can free the children and their parents. As we In the heart of the rolling hills of Virginia, hidden beneath a veil of thick, swirling fog, stood the Eldridge estate. With its grandiose architecture and sprawling grounds, it was a symbol of the wealth and ambition of the Eldridge family, one of the most prominent families of the 19th century. However, behind its stately facade lay a history tainted with tragedy and despair, a history that had earned the estate a reputation as one of the most haunted locations in the region. The Eldridge family had been blessed with prosperity and respectability until a series of inexplicable events began to plague them. Whispers of curses and dark omens spread like wildfire, and the estate, once a bustling hub of life and celebration, became a desolate shell, abandoned and shrouded in mystery. Legend spoke of a family secret, an ancestral curse that had doomed them to tragedy and loss. On a particularly eerie autumn night, my friends, Clara, Jake, and Nora, decided to explore the infamous Eldridge estate. We had heard countless tales of its haunted history, and a restless curiosity propelled us forward. With flashlights in hand and an old map detailing the estate's layout, we arrived at the estate's wrought iron gates, which creaked ominously as we pushed them open. The atmosphere was thick with tension as we stepped onto the property. "I can't believe we're actually doing this," Clara said, her voice a mix of excitement and fear. "It's just an old house. What's the worst that could happen?" Jake replied, trying to sound brave. "Famous last words," Nora muttered, casting a wary glance at the looming structure. The mansion itself was a breathtaking sight, with its towering spires and intricate stonework, but the decay of neglect marred its beauty. As we approached the entrance, I felt an unsettling chill creep down my spine. The front door was slightly ajar, and a deep, foreboding darkness awaited us within. "Let's get this over with," Jake said, pushing the door open further. The hinges groaned in protest, and the air inside felt cold and stale. We stepped into the grand foyer, our flashlights illuminating the faded grandeur of the estate. Dust motes danced in the beam of light, and the sound of our footsteps echoed eerily in the silence. Portraits of the Eldridge family lined the walls, their eyes seeming to follow our every move. "Look at this place," Nora whispered, awestruck. "It's like stepping into a time capsule." As we explored the main level, I began to feel a strange presence lurking in the shadows. The air grew heavier, and I could almost hear faint whispers calling out to us. "Do you guys feel that?" I asked, glancing at my friends. "Feel what?" Jake replied, his brow furrowed in confusion. "It feels alive," I said, shivering despite the warmth of my jacket. We made our way into a grand parlor, where faded wallpaper peeled from the walls like skin. A grand piano sat in the corner, its keys yellowed with age. I walked over and pressed a key tentatively, the haunting sound echoing through the room. "Nice touch," Clara said, rolling her eyes. "Just what we need. More creepiness." As we continued to explore, I stumbled upon a dusty journal lying on a side table. The cover was worn and tattered, but the pages within were surprisingly well preserved. "Guys, come here. I found something," I called. Clara and Jake rushed over as I opened the journal. The first few pages were filled with elegant handwriting, detailing the daily life of the Eldridge family. However, as I flipped through, the entries grew darker, tinged with desperation and fear. April 5th, 1887. The shadows have returned. I can feel their presence in the house, creeping into our lives, stealing away our joy. My husband insists it's all in my head, but I know what I see. "Sounds like she was losing it," Jake said, glancing at the pages. "Or maybe she was onto something," Clara replied thoughtfully. I continued reading, my heart racing. May 20th, 1887. Last night, I saw my daughter, Eliza, playing in the garden. She was laughing, but when I called to her, she turned and looked at me with eyes full of sorrow. I know something is wrong. I must protect my family. "Wait, what happened to Eliza?" I asked, feeling a wave of dread wash over me. "Let's find out," Clara said, urging me to turn the page. As I read further, the entries became increasingly frantic. June 12th, 1887. "They have taken her. Eliza has vanished without a trace. I have searched every corner of this estate, but there is no sign of her. I fear I will lose my mind if this continues. Nora looked over my shoulder, her expression one of horror. What does it mean? Taken? I don't know, I whispered, closing the journal. But it's clear that something terrible happened here. Just then, we heard a noise from upstairs, a soft thud, followed by a faint giggle. We exchanged nervous glances. Did you hear that? Clara asked, her eyes wide with fear. Maybe it's just the wind, Jake suggested, though his voice lacked confidence. No way. We have to check it out, I insisted, feeling an inexplicable pull toward the sound. Reluctantly, the others agreed, and we climbed the grand staircase, the old wood creaking beneath our feet. The air grew colder as we ascended, and the laughter echoed again, this time more pronounced. It seemed to come from a room at the end of the hallway. As we approached the door, I hesitated. What if it's a trap? I whispered. Or a ghost? Nora added, her voice trembling. Only one way to find out, Jake said, pushing the door open. The room was a child's nursery, filled with dusty toys and a rocking chair that swayed gently, though there was no one in sight. This is unsettling, Clara said, stepping inside cautiously. Why is everything so creepy? Jake muttered, scanning the room for any sign of life. Suddenly, the rocking chair stopped and the laughter echoed again, now sounding closer. Play with us, a small voice called from the shadows. Who's there? I demanded, my heart racing. Come play, the voice chimed, and from the darkness emerged a figure. A little girl, no more than 7 years old, her dress tattered and her hair wild. Her face was pale, and her eyes held a haunting sadness. Are you Eliza? I asked, feeling a mix of fear and sympathy. The girl nodded, her expression vacant. They won't let me leave, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I need help. What do you mean? Clara asked, stepping closer. They're in the shadows. They want to take you too, Eliza said, her gaze darting around the room. You have to go before it's too late. The air grew thick with an oppressive weight, and the shadows around us deepened. We can help you, I said, stepping forward, but you have to tell us what happened. I can't remember, Eliza replied, her voice trembling, but I know it has to do with the curse. Curse? Jake echoed, glancing nervously at the door. The curse of the Eldridge family, I said, piecing it together. It's what trapped you here. Eliza nodded, tears welling in her eyes. You have to find the truth. It's hidden in the basement. Come on, we have to go, Clara urged, but Eliza's small hand reached out to mine. Don't leave me, she cried, her voice filled with desperation. We won't, I promised. But we need to figure out how to help you first. Suddenly, the shadows surged forward, engulfing the room in darkness. Leave while you can, a deep voice growled, sending chills down my spine. We need to get to the basement now, Jake shouted, pulling us toward the door. As we fled the nursery, the shadows closed in around us, whispering in a language we could not understand. The laughter of the other children echoed ominously, urging us to hurry. We raced down the hallway, down the staircase, and into the basement, our hearts pounding in our chests. The door slammed shut behind us, sealing us inside the dimly lit room filled with old crates and dusty relics. Where do we start? Nora asked, panting. The journal said the truth is hidden down here, I replied, scanning the room for anything that might reveal the estate's dark secret. We searched through the crates, uncovering broken furniture, old toys, and remnants of a family's life long forgotten. Finally, Clara stumbled upon a small, ornate box buried beneath a pile of dust. Look at this, she exclaimed, holding it up. What is it? Jake asked, approaching her. It's locked, Clara said, examining the intricate design. Maybe we can find the key, Nora suggested, looking around the room. As we continued to search, a feeling of dread settled over us. The shadows seemed to pulsate, whispering warnings of impending doom. Guys, I think we need to hurry, I urged, glancing nervously at the door. Just then, I spotted a glimmering object on the floor near. In the small town of Ravenswood, nestled within the misty hills of New England, stood Blackwood Hall, an imposing mansion draped in ivy and secrets. With its tall, narrow windows and Gothic architecture, it commanded attention, yet it was also a source of fear and intrigue among the townspeople. Tales of the house's cursed history had been passed down through generations, each story darker than the last. Blackwood Hall had been built in the early 1800s by the enigmatic Lord Theodore Blackwood, a man known for his eccentricities and obsession with the occult. It was said that Lord Blackwood had made a pact with dark forces to gain wealth and power, a deal that would cost him dearly. After his mysterious disappearance, the estate fell into disrepair, its halls echoing with the whispers of the past. One chilly autumn evening, my friends, Sophie, Tom, and Lisa, decided it was time to uncover the truth behind Blackwood Hall. We had grown up hearing the tales, and curiosity had finally won over our fears. Armed with flashlights, a camera, and our brave spirits, we set off toward the foreboding mansion, the air thick with anticipation. As we approached the entrance, the wind howled through the trees, and the moon cast an eerie glow over the estate. "I can't believe we're actually doing this," Sophie said, her voice wavering slightly. "Just think of the stories we'll have to tell," Tom replied, trying to lighten the mood. "Or the ghosts we'll encounter," Lisa added, glancing nervously at the mansion's silhouette. Pushing open the creaking front door, we stepped into the grand foyer. Dust motes danced in the beams of our flashlights, and the air was heavy with the scent of age and decay. The ornate staircase spiraled upward, and faded portraits of the Blackwood family lined the walls, their eyes watching us with a haunting intensity. "Let's split up and explore," Tom suggested, his excitement palpable. "We'll meet back here in an hour." I hesitated, feeling a chill run down my spine, but the thrill of adventure was too tempting. "Fine, but let's stick together in pairs," I insisted, pairing up with Sophie while Lisa and Tom ventured upstairs. As Sophie and I explored the lower level, we entered the grand dining room, where a long table was still set with tarnished silverware and cracked china. "This is insane," Sophie said, running her fingers over the dusty tablecloth. "It's like time stopped here, or like they just vanished," I replied, a shiver coursing through me as I gazed at the empty chairs. Suddenly, we heard a loud crash from above, causing us to jump. "What was that?" I whispered, my heart racing. "Let's check it out," Sophie suggested, her curiosity overcoming her fear. We hurried up the staircase, the floorboards creaking beneath our weight. As we reached the second floor, the atmosphere shifted, and an overwhelming sense of dread washed over us. We followed the sound of movement down a dark hallway, our flashlights flickering against the shadows. In one of the rooms, we found Tom and Lisa, both looking pale and shaken. "What happened?" I asked, concern etching my features. "We heard something in the attic," Lisa said, her voice trembling. It sounded like crying. Sophie and I exchanged nervous glances. "We have to check it out," I said, trying to sound brave. The four of us ascended to the attic, the air growing colder as we climbed the narrow staircase. When we reached the top, the door creaked open to reveal a dimly lit space filled with old furniture and forgotten memories. In the corner, we saw a figure, a young girl, no older than 10, sitting on an old trunk, her head bowed. "Hello?" Sophie called softly, taking a cautious step forward. The girl looked up, her eyes wide and filled with sadness. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Who are you?" Tom asked, stepping closer. "I'm Evelyn," the girl replied, her voice trembling. "I've been trapped here for so long. They won't let me leave." "Who won't let you?" I asked, my heart aching for the lost child. "The shadows," she said, shivering. "They come at night and take those who wander too far." "Evelyn, what happened to you?" Lisa asked, her voice filled with compassion. "I don't remember," she said, tears streaming down her face. "But I know my father made a terrible mistake. He summoned them, and now we're all trapped here." The shadows around us seemed to flicker, and I felt a cold breeze sweep through the attic, making the hairs on my arms stand on end. "We need to help you," I said, my voice firm. "But we have to know what your father did." "He wanted power," Evelyn replied, her voice barely above a whisper. He thought he could control them, but they took him. They took everyone. A deep rumbling echoed through the attic, and the shadows grew thicker, swirling around us like a storm. We have to leave, Tom shouted, grabbing Evelyn's hand. No, you can't leave me, she cried, her eyes wide with terror. We'll come back for you, I promise, Sophie said, her voice filled with urgency. As we turned to flee, the shadows lashed out, brushing against my skin like icy fingers. The room filled with anguished whispers, echoing the pain and despair of those trapped within the mansion's walls. We stumbled down the stairs, our hearts racing, and burst through the front door into the cool night air. The moon illuminated the estate, casting long shadows across the grounds. We gathered ourselves outside, panting and shaken. Did that really just happen? Lisa asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. I think we need to find out more about what happened to Evelyn and her family, I said, trying to calm my racing heart. We can't just leave her here. What do we do? Tom asked, looking toward the darkened windows of Blackwood Hall. There has to be something in the house, some clue or a journal that can explain the curse, Sophie suggested. We made our way back inside, determined to uncover the truth. This time, we headed to the library, a vast room filled with shelves of dusty books and old tomes. The atmosphere was thick with history, and the air was heavy with secrets. As we searched through the books, I stumbled upon an ancient volume bound in worn leather. The cover was embossed with strange symbols, and as I opened it, the musty scent of parchment filled the air. Look at this, I said, beckoning the others over. It's a journal belonging to Lord Blackwood. Tom leaned closer, his eyes scanning the pages. It's all about rituals and summoning, he said, his voice laced with disbelief. He was trying to gain power over the spirits. Is there anything about the curse? Lisa asked urgently. Yeah, I said, turning the pages quickly. It looks like he succeeded, but at a terrible cost. He summoned dark forces, and when he realized he couldn't control them, they turned on him. Is that why Evelyn is trapped? Sophie asked, her expression growing somber. It seems so, I replied, my heart sinking. He brought something into this world that he couldn't contain, and now it's taken everyone he loved. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and a cold wind swept through the library, causing the books to rattle on their shelves. We need to hurry, Tom said, glancing nervously at the windows. I flipped to the final pages of the journal, my hands trembling. There has to be a way to break the curse, I said desperately. Here, Lisa pointed at a passage. It says if the summoner's blood is spilled upon the ground where the ritual was performed, the spirits can be freed. What does that mean? Sophie asked, looking worried. It means we need to find where he performed the ritual, I replied, scanning the journal for clues. Let's check the basement, Tom suggested, his voice steadying as we gathered our courage. We raced down the staircase, our hearts pounding as we entered the basement. It was dark and musty, and the air was thick with a sense of foreboding. As we searched through the clutter, we spotted a hidden door at the far end of the room, partially concealed behind a stack of old crates. Do you think that's it? Sophie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. There's only one way to find out, I said, stepping forward and pushing the door open. Beyond the door lay a dimly lit chamber, the walls adorned with strange symbols and carvings that seemed to pulse with energy. In the center stood an altar, covered in dust and cobwebs, with remnants of a dark ritual still present. A feeling of dread washed over us as we stepped inside. This must be where he summoned the spirits, Tom said, his voice trembling. What do we do? Lisa asked, her eyes darting around the room. We need to recreate the ritual, I said, flipping through the journal for guidance. We have to reverse what he did. As I read the instructions, a sense of urgency filled the air. We need to gather the elements he used, the earth, the blood, and a binding symbol. It's the only way to free Evelyn and the others. What about the blood? Tom asked, looking concerned. In the heart of a foggy valley in Maine, where the trees twisted like ancient fingers reaching for the sky, stood Greystone Manor. Built in the late 1800s, the mansion was a masterpiece of Victorian architecture, complete with turrets and expansive grounds. Yet, despite its beauty, it was a house shrouded in tragedy and sorrow. Locals spoke in hushed tones of the manor's cursed history, an eternal tale of love, betrayal, and restless spirits. The manor was originally the home of the Hawthorne family, known for their lavish parties and extravagant lifestyle. However, beneath the surface of wealth and glamour, dark secrets festered. Lady Isabella Hawthorne, the matriarch, was said to possess an unusual gift, a keen intuition that allowed her to see beyond the veil of life and death. This gift, however, became a curse that would ultimately doom her family. As time passed, rumors of strange occurrences in Greystone Manor began to circulate. It was said that Isabella had summoned a spirit to protect her family, but in doing so, she unwittingly unleashed a dark force that consumed her husband, Lord Edmund Hawthorne, leaving him mad and desperate. His tragic fate was sealed when he took his own life in the very halls of the manor, sending the family into a downward spiral of despair. By the time the last of the Hawthornes had left the manor, it had become a ghostly shell of its former self. The townspeople avoided it, claiming it was cursed, and the manor remained abandoned for decades, lost to time and memories. One gloomy evening, my friends, Emily, Ben, and Rachel, decided to explore the infamous Greystone Manor. As we drove along the winding, overgrown path leading to the estate, the air grew heavier and the temperature dropped noticeably. "This place gives me the creeps," Emily said, peering out the window at the looming silhouette of the manor. "Come on, it's just an old house," Ben replied, trying to sound brave. "What's the worst that could happen?" Famous last words, Rachel muttered, clutching her flashlight tightly. When we finally arrived at the front entrance, the sight was both beautiful and haunting. The intricate stonework was worn by time, and ivy crept up the walls like a living entity. "Should we go in?" I asked, my heart racing with both fear and excitement. "Definitely," Ben said, pushing the creaking door open. The interior was cloaked in darkness, the musty air thick with dust and the scent of decay. Our flashlights danced across the room, illuminating faded wallpaper and cobwebs that hung like curtains. "This is incredible," Rachel whispered, stepping into the grand foyer. The staircase spiraled upwards, and portraits of the Hawthorne family hung on the walls, their eyes watching us with a mixture of sorrow and longing. As we explored the ground floor, we stumbled upon the drawing room, where the remnants of opulence still lingered. A grand piano sat in the corner, its keys yellowed with age, and an ornate chandelier hung from the ceiling, its crystals glinting like trapped stars. "I wonder what it was like to live here," Emily mused, tracing her fingers over the dusty surface of a table. Just then, we heard a soft, melodic humming emanating from the hallway. We exchanged wary glances. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my pulse quickening. "It's probably just the wind," Ben suggested, though he didn't sound convinced. "Let's check it out," Rachel said, her curiosity piqued. We followed the sound, moving cautiously down the dimly lit hallway. The air felt thick, as if it were charged with electricity. As we rounded a corner, we found ourselves in the library. Books lined the shelves, and in the center of the room stood a figure. A woman in a flowing white dress, her back turned to us. She was humming softly, her long hair cascading down her back. Hello?" Emily called hesitantly. The woman turned slowly, revealing a pale face with sad, soulful eyes. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly, her voice echoing with an otherworldly quality. "Who are you?" I asked, a chill running down my spine. "I am Isabella Hawthorne," she replied, her gaze distant. "This is my home, but it has been lost to shadows." We stood frozen in shock. The tales we had heard were suddenly coming to life. "We've come to learn about the history of the manor," Ben stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "The history is one of pain," Isabella said, her expression sorrowful. "I tried to protect my family, but my attempts were in vain. A dark force was unleashed, and now it haunts these halls. Is there a way to stop it?" Rachel asked, stepping forward. Isabella's eyes darkened. "The only way to break the curse is to confront the shadows that linger. They are bound to this place, feeding off the despair that was sown in life. What do we need to do? I asked, feeling a surge of determination. You must find the heart of the darkness, where my husband took his life. Only then can you free the souls trapped within these walls, she instructed, her voice filled with urgency. Without hesitation, we followed Isabella's guidance, leaving the library and venturing deeper into the manor. Our footsteps echoed in the silence as we descended to the basement, a cold dread settling over us. Are we sure about this? Emily asked, her voice quivering. There's no turning back now, Ben replied, his eyes scanning the dark corners. The basement was dimly lit, and the air felt thick with tension. As we searched the room, we found a small door tucked away in the corner. This must be it, I said, pushing it open. Inside was a small, damp chamber. The walls were lined with stone, and the air was heavy with despair. In the center of the room stood a wooden beam, stained dark with age. This is where he died, Rachel said, her voice barely above a whisper. We need to summon the spirits, I said, my hands shaking as I flipped through my notes. There's a ritual we can perform. Ben and Emily nodded, their expressions resolute. We gathered around the beam, placing our hands on it as I recited the incantation. The air crackled with energy, and the shadows in the corners began to swirl, forming dark shapes that whispered and beckoned us. Show yourselves, I called out, my voice strong despite the fear coursing through me. The shadows coalesced, and suddenly, figures began to emerge. A man with wild eyes and a tormented expression stepped forward. I am Lord Edmund Hawthorne, he declared, his voice echoing like thunder. I am bound to this place, a prisoner of my own making. Why did you do it? I asked, feeling a mix of pity and anger. I sought power beyond comprehension, he replied, his eyes glinting with madness. But the darkness consumed me, and now I am trapped here, a puppet to my own despair. You can be freed. Isabella's voice echoed from behind us, her figure shimmering with light. You must accept the truth of your actions and release the pain you have caused. Lord Edmund faltered, his expression shifting from rage to sorrow. I can't bear the weight of my sins, he admitted, tears glistening in his eyes. Let go of the darkness, Isabella urged, her voice soothing. You must face the consequences of your choices. As we continued the ritual, the shadows writhed around us, echoing the pain of countless souls trapped in the manor. Feel the love that was lost, I urged, my heart pounding. Embrace the light. In that moment, the room filled with a brilliant glow, illuminating the darkness. The figures of the lost souls appeared, their faces twisted in agony. Help us, they cried in unison, reaching out toward the light. Release them, I shouted, my voice carrying strength as I continued the incantation. The shadows began to retreat, their whispers fading into nothingness. Lord Edmund stepped forward, tears streaming down his face. I'm so sorry, he wept, his voice cracking. I never meant for any of this to happen. With one final surge of energy, the light engulfed the room, and the spirits began to ascend, their cries transforming into whispers of gratitude. Thank you, they echoed, a chorus of voices fading into the ether. As the last of the shadows dissipated, a profound silence enveloped the chamber. Lord Edmund and Isabella stood together, their expressions serene. You have freed us, Isabella said, her voice warm with gratitude. The curse has been lifted. We stood in awe, the weight of the manor's history finally lifted. What happens now? Ben asked, his voice filled with wonder. We can finally rest, Edmund replied, a soft smile spreading across his face. Thank you for your courage. With a final flicker of light, they vanished, leaving us in the quiet of the chamber. We did it, Emily whispered, tears of relief brimming in her eyes. As we made our way back to the main floor, the atmosphere of Greystone Manor felt different, lighter, almost peaceful. The air was no longer thick with despair, and the shadows no longer lurked in the corners. Let's get out of here, Rachel said, a smile breaking through her earlier fear. We stepped out into the cool night air. Nestled on the outskirts of a sleepy village, surrounded by towering trees and a veil of mist, stood Ravenwood House. The once majestic mansion had fallen into disrepair, its windows cracked and its facade overgrown with vines. Locals often spoke of the house in hushed tones, sharing tales of a curse that had plagued the property for generations. They claimed it was haunted by the spirits of those who had suffered there, each with their own tragic story woven into the very fabric of the house. Ravenwood House was built in the late 1800s by the wealthy Caldwell family. Nathaniel Caldwell, a successful businessman, had dreams of grandeur for his family. However, beneath the surface of wealth and privilege lay a web of dark secrets and tragic events that would haunt the house forever. The Caldwells were known for their lavish parties and extravagant lifestyle. However, the family's fortunes began to wane when Nathaniel's wife, Eleanor, fell ill. Despite her husband's efforts to save her, Eleanor died tragically, leaving Nathaniel heartbroken. Grief-stricken and desperate for solace, he sought out a local witch rumored to possess dark powers. She promised to bring Eleanor back, but at a cost. The ritual was performed in the dimly lit cellar of Ravenwood House, where Nathaniel's desperation transformed into madness. As he chanted incantations and drew symbols in the dust, he felt a presence manifest, a spirit that was not Eleanor, but something much darker. The ensuing chaos left Nathaniel dead, his body discovered the next day in the very cellar where he had summoned the entity. From that moment on, Ravenwood House became a shadow of its former self. The Caldwell family fell into ruin, and the estate was abandoned, left to the elements. Rumors spread about the curse that had befallen the house, and stories of ghostly apparitions and unsettling occurrences grew over the years. It was on a rainy autumn evening when my friends, James, Claire, and Mark, decided to investigate Ravenwood House. The clouds loomed overhead, casting an ominous shadow over the village as we parked our car at the edge of the property. "Are we really going in there?" Claire asked, glancing nervously at the mansion. "Come on, it's just an old house," Mark replied, trying to sound brave despite his own apprehension. "Yeah, what's the worst that could happen?" James added, attempting to reassure us. As we approached the front door, the sound of the wind howling through the trees sent a chill down my spine. "This place looks even creepier up close," I murmured, studying the crumbling facade and broken windows. We pushed the door open, and it creaked loudly, as if protesting our entry. The air inside was thick with dust and the scent of decay. We switched on our flashlights, the beams cutting through the darkness as we stepped into the foyer. Cobwebs hung like curtains, and the grand staircase spiraled upwards, beckoning us to explore further. "This is incredible," Claire whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "Or incredibly terrifying," I replied, trying to keep my nerves at bay. As we ventured deeper into the house, we stumbled upon the living room, where faded furniture lay draped in dust. A grand piano stood in the corner, its keys yellowed with age. "I wonder how long it's been since anyone played this," Mark said, running his fingers across the keys, producing a haunting melody that echoed through the empty halls. Suddenly, a loud crash came from the kitchen, causing us to jump. "What was that?" Claire exclaimed, her eyes wide with fear. "Probably just the wind," I suggested, though I felt a knot forming in my stomach. "Let's go check it out," James said, his curiosity overpowering his fear. We made our way toward the kitchen, the floorboards creaking beneath our feet. As we entered, we found a pot that had fallen off the counter, rolling across the floor. "See? Nothing to worry about," Mark said, though the unease lingered in the air. But as we turned to leave, the temperature suddenly dropped and an icy breeze swept through the room. "Did you feel that?" Claire asked, shivering. "Yeah, it's freezing in here," I replied, glancing at the window, which was tightly shut. Just then, we heard a soft whispering coming from the hallway. "Did you hear that?" James asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It sounded like someone calling for help," Claire said, her face paling. "We have to see what it is," I insisted, feeling an inexplicable pull toward the sound. We ventured down the hallway, the whispers growing louder. As we approached a door at the end of the corridor, we hesitated. "What if it's a trap?" Mark said, glancing nervously around. Or it could be someone in need, I replied, pushing the door open. Inside was a dimly lit study, filled with old books and dusty furniture. In the corner stood a figure, a woman dressed in a flowing white gown, her long hair cascading over her shoulders. She was staring out the window, her back turned to us. "Excuse me?" Claire called softly. The woman turned slowly, revealing a pale face and sorrowful eyes. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice trembling. "Who are you?" I asked, taking a cautious step forward. "I am Eleanor Caldwell," she replied, her gaze distant. "This is my home, but it has been tainted by darkness. Are you trapped here?" James asked, sympathy etching his features. "I am bound to this place, cursed by my husband's desperation," Eleanor explained, her voice heavy with sorrow. "He sought to bring me back, but he unleashed something far more sinister. What can we do to help you?" I asked, feeling a surge of determination. "You must confront the darkness that lingers in this house," she said, her expression shifting to one of urgency. "Only then can I find peace." "Where do we start?" Claire asked, glancing around the room. "In the cellar," Eleanor replied. "That is where the darkness was born. You must go there and confront what remains." With that, the room grew cold, and Eleanor's figure began to fade. "Hurry," she urged, her voice echoing in the air. We exchanged worried glances, the gravity of our task weighing heavily on us. "Let's go," I said, leading the way back down the stairs toward the basement door. As we descended the narrow staircase, the air grew thicker, and an unsettling energy surrounded us. The cellar door creaked ominously as we pushed it open, revealing a dark, damp room filled with shadows. In the center stood a large altar, surrounded by strange symbols carved into the stone. "This must be where it happened," Mark said, his voice trembling. I approached the altar, feeling an inexplicable pull. "We need to perform a cleansing ritual," I said, recalling some of the steps I had read about in old texts. "We don't even know what we're doing," Claire protested, glancing nervously at the shadows that seemed to dance along the walls. "We have to try," I insisted. "We can't leave Eleanor trapped here." We gathered around the altar, our hands clasped together. I began to recite the incantation, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. As I spoke the words, the shadows around us began to swirl and darken, coiling like smoke. "Stay focused," James urged, his grip tightening on my hand. The temperature dropped sharply, and an oppressive presence filled the room. "You cannot escape," a deep voice boomed, reverberating through the cellar. "Who are you?" I shouted, trying to maintain my composure. "I am the darkness that was unleashed," it snarled. "You cannot free the lost souls. They are mine." As the shadows writhed, I felt Eleanor's presence surrounding us, a gentle warmth amidst the cold. "You must believe in the light," she whispered, her voice ethereal. Drawing strength from her words, I continued the incantation, my heart pounding in my chest. "By the power of love and light, I command you to leave this place." The shadows roared, but I stood firm, my voice unwavering. "You have no power here. Release the souls you have imprisoned." With a final surge of energy, the shadows shrieked, and the room was filled with blinding light. The darkness began to retreat, swirling away from us like smoke in the wind. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as the oppressive weight lifted. "Free us," the voices cried, echoing in harmony. As the last of the shadows dissipated, the cellar fell silent. We stood in awe, the air now light and filled with warmth. "We did it," Claire breathed, tears of relief streaming down her face. "Eleanor is free," James said, looking around in disbelief. The figure of Eleanor appeared before us, her expression one of peace and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with warmth. "You have freed not only me but all who were trapped in this house." With a soft smile, she began to fade. "The curse is lifted. Ravenwood House can finally rest." As we made our way back up the stairs, the atmosphere felt transformed. The oppressive darkness had lifted, and the house seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. "I can't believe we actually did that," Mark said, his voice filled with wonder. "Sometimes it just takes a..." Nestled deep within the rolling hills of rural Pennsylvania, Eldridge Manor was a grand estate that had seen better days. Its sprawling gardens, once bursting with vibrant flowers and meticulously trimmed hedges, were now overrun with weeds and wild grass. The once majestic facade was marred by peeling paint and broken windows, yet despite its dilapidated state, the manor held an undeniable allure. Many in the nearby town had heard whispers of its haunted history, a history steeped in tragedy, betrayal, and a lingering curse. Eldridge Manor was built in the mid-1800s by the wealthy Eldridge family, known for their extravagant gatherings and lavish lifestyle. At the center of it all was Matilda Eldridge, a striking woman with a fiery spirit and a passion for life. She married Arthur Eldridge, a shrewd businessman whose wealth and influence grew as quickly as Matilda's popularity. The couple appeared to have it all: a beautiful home, wealth, and a thriving family. However, beneath the glittering facade, their lives were overshadowed by a series of tragic events. After several years of marriage, Matilda gave birth to a son, Henry, but her joy was short-lived. The child was frail and sickly, suffering from a mysterious illness that no doctor could cure. Despite her desperate attempts to care for him, Henry's condition worsened. Heartbroken, Matilda sought solace in the world of the supernatural, believing that a medium could provide her with the answers she craved. In her quest for answers, Matilda turned to a renowned local medium named Madame Leclerc, known for her ability to communicate with the spirits. During their sessions, Matilda learned of a dark curse that had been placed upon her family generations ago, a curse that foretold the doom of every firstborn son. Desperate to save Henry, Matilda became obsessed with lifting the curse, but her obsession took a toll on her marriage. Arthur, overwhelmed by grief and frustration, distanced himself from Matilda, seeking refuge in his work. In her desperation, Matilda took extreme measures. She conducted a ritual in the depths of Eldridge Manor, hoping to summon the spirit of her ancestors for guidance. The evening was filled with flickering candlelight and eerie whispers as she called upon the spirits to reveal the truth. But as the ritual unfolded, something went horribly wrong. A powerful force was unleashed, and the house shuddered as darkness enveloped Matilda, consuming her whole. The following day, the townspeople discovered Matilda's lifeless body lying in the garden, her eyes wide open in terror. Henry, too, succumbed to his illness shortly after, and Arthur, consumed by grief, abandoned the estate. Eldridge Manor fell into disrepair, and the townsfolk began to whisper of a curse that haunted the property, one that would linger for generations. Years passed, and the tale of Eldridge Manor faded into legend. It was said that the spirits of Matilda and Henry roamed the halls, trapped in a cycle of despair. Those brave enough to venture near the estate reported chilling encounters, whispers in the night, flickering lights, and ghostly apparitions. It was during one fateful Halloween weekend that my friends, Lisa, Jake, and Sarah, decided to explore the infamous Eldridge Manor. The air was thick with anticipation as we parked our car on the overgrown driveway, the moonlight casting eerie shadows across the estate. "This place is even creepier than I imagined," Lisa said, shivering slightly. "Come on, it's just an old house," Jake replied, attempting to sound nonchalant. "What's the worst that could happen?" "Famous last words," Sarah muttered under her breath, clutching her flashlight tightly. We pushed the creaking door open, stepping into the darkened foyer. The air felt heavy, charged with an energy that sent chills down my spine. Dust motes danced in the beams of our flashlights as we surveyed the grand entrance, its once beautiful decor now draped in decay. "This is amazing," Jake said, running his fingers along the banister of the grand staircase. "Or incredibly creepy," I replied, my heart racing with a mix of excitement and apprehension. As we explored the ground floor, we found the living room, where faded furniture lay in disarray, covered in layers of dust. A large portrait of Matilda hung above the fireplace, her piercing gaze seemingly following us. "She looks intense," Lisa whispered, stepping closer to examine the painting. Just then, a loud crash echoed from the kitchen, causing us to jump. What was that? Sarah exclaimed, her eyes wide with fear. Probably just the wind, Jake suggested, though he didn't sound convinced. Let's go check it out, I said, feeling a mix of fear and curiosity. We cautiously made our way to the kitchen, where we discovered a stack of old plates had toppled over. Looks like we're not alone, Lisa said nervously. Or it's just a very old house settling, Jake replied, though he glanced around nervously. Suddenly, the temperature dropped and an icy breeze swept through the room. Did you feel that? I asked, my breath visible in the suddenly frigid air. Yeah, it's freezing in here, Sarah said, rubbing her arms for warmth. Before we could react, we heard a soft, melodic humming coming from the hallway. Did you hear that? Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. It sounds like a lullaby, Lisa said, her expression a mix of fascination and fear. Let's follow it, I suggested, feeling an inexplicable pull toward the sound. We ventured down the hallway, the humming growing louder. As we approached a door at the end of the corridor, we exchanged anxious glances. What if it's a ghost? Sarah whispered. Only one way to find out, Jake replied, pushing the door open. Inside was a dimly lit nursery, the air heavy with the scent of age. Dust-covered toys lay scattered on the floor, and a rocking chair swayed gently in the corner, despite the stillness of the room. On the wall hung a faded mural of a mother cradling her child, a hauntingly beautiful scene that sent shivers down my spine. As we stepped inside, the humming stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the corner, a woman dressed in a flowing white gown, her long hair cascading over her shoulders. She was cradling a child, her expression one of sorrow and longing. Who are you? I asked, my voice trembling. I am Matilda Eldridge, she replied, her voice soft yet filled with anguish. This is my home, but it has been cursed by my own actions. Why are you still here? Lisa asked, her eyes wide with empathy. I sought to save my son, but in my desperation, I unleashed a darkness that consumed us both, Matilda explained, her gaze distant. Now, I am trapped, bound to this house by the very curse I sought to lift. What can we do to help you? I asked, feeling a surge of determination. There is a way to break the curse, Matilda said, her voice growing stronger. You must confront the darkness that lingers in the cellar. It is there that my spirit remains tethered to this world. Lead us there, Jake said, stepping forward. Matilda gestured toward the door, and we followed her down the hallway, our hearts racing with both fear and anticipation. As we descended the stairs to the cellar, the air grew colder, and an unsettling energy enveloped us. The cellar door creaked open, revealing a dark, damp room filled with shadows. In the center stood an altar adorned with strange symbols. This is where it happened, Matilda whispered, her expression pained. We need to perform a cleansing ritual, I said, recalling what I had read about breaking curses. Are you sure we can do this? Sarah asked, glancing nervously at the dark corners of the room. We have to try, I insisted. We can't leave Matilda trapped here. We gathered around the altar, our hands clasped together. I began to recite the incantation, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. As I spoke the words, the shadows around us began to swirl, coiling like smoke. Stay focused, Jake urged, his grip tightening on my hand. The temperature dropped sharply, and an oppressive presence filled the room. You cannot escape. A deep voice boomed, reverberating through the cellar. Who are you? I shouted, trying to maintain my composure. I am the darkness that was unleashed, it snarled. You cannot free the lost souls. They are mine. As the shadows writhed, I felt Matilda's presence surrounding us, a gentle warmth amidst the cold. Believe in the light, she whispered, her voice ethereal. Drawing strength from her words, I continued the incantation, my heart pounding in my chest. By the power of love and light, I command you to leave this place. The shadows roared, but I stood firm, my voice unwavering. You have no power here. Release the souls you have imprisoned. With a final surge of energy, the shadows shrieked, and the room was filled with blinding light. the darkness began to retreat, swirling away from us like smoke in the wind. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as the oppressive weight lifted. "Free us!" the voices cried, echoing in harmony. As the last of the shadows dissipated, the cellar fell silent. At the edge of a dense forest, far removed from the bustle of modern life, stood Willow Creek Manor, a once grand estate that had long been shrouded in shadows and mystery. Its ornate architecture, characterized by towering spires and intricately carved woodwork, had succumbed to the ravages of time. Vines crawled up its weathered walls, and the once vibrant gardens lay choked with weeds. But despite its dilapidated state, the manor possessed a haunting beauty that drew the curious and the brave alike. Local legends spoke of the manor's tragic past, a history steeped in loss, betrayal, and an unsettling curse that lingered over the estate. It was built in the early 1800s by the Hawthorne family, who were known for their wealth and social standing. At the heart of the family was Elizabeth Hawthorne, a woman of extraordinary grace and beauty, admired by all who knew her. Elizabeth married William Hawthorne, a prominent landowner with ambitions that matched his wealth. Together, they appear to have a perfect life, complete with two adoring children, Samuel and Clara. However, their idyllic existence was shattered by a series of devastating events. The family suffered a great tragedy when Clara fell ill with a mysterious ailment. Desperate to save his daughter, William sought the help of a local healer, but nothing could cure Clara's condition. In her final moments, she whispered words of love to her family, leaving them shattered and heartbroken. The grief that followed Clara's death enveloped the family, consuming them with despair. William became a recluse, spending his days in the manor's library, buried in books on the occult and dark magic. Elizabeth, feeling abandoned and lost, turned to her friends for solace, but found herself increasingly isolated as William's obsession with the supernatural grew. In a desperate attempt to communicate with Clara, William conducted rituals in the manor's basement, seeking to summon her spirit. Each night, the house echoed with strange sounds, whispers, cries, and the sound of footsteps echoing through empty hallways. Neighbors began to notice the peculiar happenings, and rumors spread of a curse that had befallen the Hawthorne family. It was during one fateful night that William's ritual went horribly wrong. As he chanted incantations in the dimly lit cellar, a powerful force surged through the room, and the air grew thick with an otherworldly energy. In a moment of terror, Elizabeth descended the stairs to confront her husband. The sight she encountered was nothing short of horrific. William was engulfed in shadows, his voice distorted and unrecognizable as he called upon dark entities. In her desperate attempt to save him, Elizabeth reached out, but the darkness lashed out, consuming her as well. The next morning, the townspeople discovered the manor silent and still. They entered to find the basement filled with remnants of William's rituals, symbols drawn in blood, candles extinguished, and the chilling presence of the Hawthorne family, now lost to the curse that had taken hold of the estate. Over time, the townspeople abandoned the manor, refusing to approach it out of fear of the spirits that lingered within its walls. As years passed, stories of Willow Creek Manor became legend. Those who dared to visit the estate spoke of ghostly apparitions, strange sounds in the night, and an oppressive feeling that hung in the air. It was said that the spirits of Elizabeth and Clara roamed the halls, forever trapped in their grief, while William's anguished cries echoed in the darkness. One rainy evening in late October, my friends, Tom, Lisa, and Ben, decided to investigate the infamous Willow Creek Manor. The weather matched the eerie atmosphere of our journey, as thunder rumbled ominously overhead and rain poured down in sheets. "I can't believe we're actually doing this," Lisa said, her voice quivering with a mix of excitement and fear. "Relax, it's just an old house," Tom replied, though his eyes darted nervously around the darkening landscape. As we approached the manor, its towering silhouette loomed in the distance, barely visible through the rain. The front door, slightly ajar, creaked ominously as we pushed it open, revealing a darkened foyer filled with dust and shadows. "Welcome to Willow Creek Manor," I said jokingly, trying to lighten the mood. Inside, the air was thick with an eerie stillness, and the only sound was the soft patter of rain against the windows. As we stepped further into the manor, we noticed the ornate furnishings that had long been abandoned. Cobwebs hung like curtains, and the walls were lined with faded portraits of the Hawthorne family. "Check out this place," Ben said, his flashlight illuminating a dusty grand piano in the corner. "It's like stepping back in time, or stepping into a horror movie," Lisa replied, her eyes wide as she scanned the room. As we explored, we came upon a grand staircase that spiraled upward into darkness. "Should we go up?" Tom asked, glancing at the creaking stairs. "Why not?" I replied, feeling a mix of curiosity and trepidation. "Let's see what's up there." The stairs creaked beneath our weight as we ascended, and the atmosphere grew colder with each step. At the top, we found a long hallway lined with doors, each one leading to a different room. We decided to explore the first door on our left. Inside, we discovered a nursery filled with old toys and a dusty crib. The walls were adorned with whimsical murals of animals and trees, but the air felt heavy with sadness. "This is where Clara must have played," Lisa whispered, her voice filled with sympathy. Suddenly, a soft lullaby echoed through the room, sending shivers down our spines. "Did you hear that?" Tom asked, his eyes widening. "Yeah, it sounded like it's coming from downstairs," Ben replied, glancing toward the door. "Let's check it out," I suggested, though my heart raced with apprehension. We hurried back down the stairs, following the sound of the haunting melody. As we entered the living room, we found a figure, a woman in a flowing white dress, her long hair cascading down her back. She was gazing out the window, lost in a world of her own. "Who are you?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling. The woman turned slowly, revealing a face etched with sorrow. "I am Elizabeth Hawthorne," she said, her voice soft and mournful. "This is my home, but it has been tainted by tragedy. Why are you still here?" Tom asked, stepping closer. "I cannot leave this place," Elizabeth replied, her gaze distant. "I lost my daughter and my husband in a desperate attempt to communicate with Clara. Now, I am trapped in a cycle of grief. What can we do to help you?" I asked, feeling a surge of empathy for her plight. "There is a way to break the curse," Elizabeth said, her voice filled with urgency. "You must confront the darkness that lingers in the cellar. It is there that my spirit remains tethered to this world." "Lead us there," Ben urged, his determination shining through. Elizabeth gestured toward the hallway, and we followed her down the stairs to the basement door. As we descended into the cellar, the air grew colder, and an oppressive energy enveloped us. The cellar was filled with shadows and a palpable sense of despair. At the center stood an altar adorned with remnants of rituals long past. Candles, wilted flowers, and strange symbols etched into the stone. "This is where it happened," Elizabeth said, her voice trembling with emotion. "We need to perform a cleansing ritual," I said, recalling what I had read about breaking curses. "Can we really do this?" Lisa asked, glancing nervously around the room. "We have to try," I insisted. "We can't leave Elizabeth trapped here." We gathered around the altar, our hands clasped together. I began to recite an incantation, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. As I spoke the words, the shadows around us began to swirl, coiling like smoke. "Stay focused," Tom urged, his grip tightening on my hand. The temperature dropped sharply, and an oppressive presence filled the room. "You cannot escape," a deep voice boomed, reverberating through the cellar. "Who are you?" I shouted, trying to maintain my composure. "I am the darkness that was unleashed," it snarled. "You cannot free the lost souls. They are mine." As the shadows writhed, I felt Elizabeth's presence surrounding us, a gentle warmth amidst the cold. "Believe in the light," she whispered, her voice ethereal. Drawing strength from her words, I continued the incantation, my heart pounding in my chest. "By the power of love and light, I command you to leave this place." The shadows roared, but I stood firm, my voice unwavering. "You have no power here. Release the souls you have imprisoned." With a final surge of energy, the shadows shrieked, and the room was filled with blinding light. The darkness began to retreat, swirling away from us like smoke in the wind. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as the oppressive weight lifted. "Free us!" the voices cried, echoing in harmony. As the last of the shadows dissipated, the cellar fell silent, and the air grew warm. Elizabeth's figure began to shimmer, her sorrowful expression transforming into one of gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with warmth. "You have freed not only me but all who were trapped in this house." With that, her figure faded, leaving us in the glow. Ravenswood House loomed on the outskirts of a small, forgotten town, its imposing silhouette a haunting reminder of its once glorious past. Built in the late 1800s by the wealthy Ravenswood family, the house was a masterpiece of Victorian architecture, boasting intricate woodwork and sprawling gardens. However, beneath its ornate exterior lay a history marred by tragedy, betrayal, and a curse that whispered through its halls. The Ravenswood family was known for their affluence and social prominence. At the heart of the family was Isabella Ravenswood, a woman of unparalleled beauty and intelligence. She married Edward Ravenswood, a shrewd businessman who amassed a fortune through questionable means. Together, they had 3 children, Jonathan, Lydia, and little Samuel. While the family appeared to lead an idyllic life, beneath the surface simmered a darkness that would ultimately consume them. Tragedy struck when Samuel, their youngest son, mysteriously vanished one stormy night. The family searched frantically for him, calling his name into the howling winds, but he seemed to have vanished without a trace. Weeks turned into months, and despair settled heavily in the hearts of the Ravenswoods. Isabella, devastated by the loss of her child, sought solace in the supernatural, believing that communicating with spirits might reveal the fate of her son. In her desperation, she turned to a local medium, Madame Lavinia, known for her supposed ability to connect with the other side. The sessions were dark and intense, filled with unsettling experiences that pushed Isabella further into the abyss of grief. Each visit left her more distraught, yet she felt an inexplicable pull to continue, convinced that Samuel was reaching out to her from beyond the grave. As time passed, Edward's frustration with Isabella's obsession grew. He attempted to persuade her to move on, to focus on their remaining children, but Isabella was relentless. The tension in the household mounted, and whispers of discontent spread throughout Ravenswood House. Shadows seemed to deepen in every corner, and the once vibrant family gatherings turned into silent dinners filled with unspoken resentment. One fateful evening, as a thunderstorm raged outside, Isabella conducted a séance in the dimly lit parlor. The air was charged with electricity, and the atmosphere grew heavy as she called upon the spirits to reveal the truth. The candles flickered, casting eerie shadows across the room, and a cold breeze swept through the hall, chilling everyone to the bone. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted, and a voice echoed through the darkness, chilling everyone to their core. "Your child is lost, bound by the curse of this house." The voice boomed, sending shivers down their spines. Isabella fell into a trance, her body trembling as the medium channeled the spirit. "What do you mean?" she cried out, her voice laced with anguish. "The darkness that dwells here has claimed him," the spirit replied, its tone ominous. "You must face the shadows of your past to find peace." Panic gripped the room as Edward realized the depths of Isabella's obsession. In a moment of desperation, he attempted to break the séance, but the candles extinguished, plunging them into darkness. The air grew thick with malevolence, and a cacophony of voices echoed through the room, drowning out their pleas. In the chaos, Jonathan and Lydia screamed as they witnessed the shadows coalesce into a figure, a dark entity that seemed to feed on their fear. "Leave this place," Edward shouted, trying to shield his family, but it was too late. The entity lunged at Isabella, its icy fingers wrapping around her throat. When the lights flickered back to life, the room was silent, the shadows retreating into the corners. Edward rushed to Isabella, who lay lifeless on the floor, her eyes wide with terror. The children wept, their cries echoing through the empty halls. The family was forever fractured, cursed to endure the tragedy of their choices. In the following weeks, Ravenswood House became a ghost of its former self. The remaining members of the family were consumed by grief and guilt. Edward withdrew into his work, avoiding the memories that haunted him. Jonathan and Lydia, too, became estranged, their bond severed by the weight of loss. The once vibrant laughter that echoed through the house faded into silence, leaving only the whispers of the past. As the years went by, the townsfolk spoke of the curse that lingered over Ravenswood House. Those who dared approach the estate reported strange occurrences, cold drafts, flickering lights, and the sounds of children's laughter echoing through the halls, only to be met with silence when they investigated. The house, once a symbol of opulence, became a warning, an ominous reminder of the darkness that could consume even the most affluent families. It was during a particularly stormy night in late October that my friends, Kate, Michael, and Jenny, decided to explore Ravenswood House. The atmosphere outside mirrored the ominous reputation of the manor, with dark clouds swirling above and rain pattering against the ground. "I can't believe we're actually doing this," Kate said, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. "Come on, it'll be fun," Michael replied, trying to mask his own apprehension. As we approached the house, its towering silhouette loomed before us, casting eerie shadows across the lawn. The front door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit foyer filled with dust and cobwebs. "Welcome to Ravenswood House," I said jokingly, attempting to lighten the mood. Inside, the air was thick with a sense of foreboding. Dust motes danced in the beams of our flashlights as we surveyed the grand entrance, its once beautiful decor now draped in decay. The walls were lined with portraits of the Ravenswood family, their expressions seemingly frozen in time. "Check out this place," Jenny said, running her fingers along the banister of the grand staircase. "Or check out how creepy it is," Kate whispered, glancing nervously at the dark corners of the room. As we explored the ground floor, we stumbled upon the parlor, where faded furniture lay in disarray, covered in layers of dust. A large portrait of Isabella hung above the fireplace, her haunting gaze following us as we moved. "She looks intense," Michael murmured, stepping closer to examine the painting. Just then, a loud crash echoed from the kitchen, causing us to jump. "What was that?" Jenny exclaimed, her eyes wide with fear. "Probably just the wind," I suggested, though I didn't sound convinced. "Let's check it out," Kate said, feeling a mix of fear and curiosity. We cautiously made our way to the kitchen, where we discovered a stack of old plates that had toppled over. "Looks like we're not alone," Michael said nervously. "Or it's just an old house settling," Jenny replied, though she glanced around nervously. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and an icy breeze swept through the room. "Did you feel that?" I asked, my breath visible in the suddenly frigid air. "Yeah, it's freezing in here," Kate said, rubbing her arms for warmth. Before we could react, we heard soft whispers coming from the hallway. "Did you hear that?" Michael asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It sounds like children," Jenny said, her expression a mix of fascination and fear. "Let's follow it," I suggested, feeling an inexplicable pull toward the sound. We ventured down the hallway, the whispers growing louder. As we approached a door at the end of the corridor, we exchanged anxious glances. "What if it's a ghost?" Kate whispered. "Only one way to find out," Michael replied, pushing the door open. Inside was a dimly lit nursery, the air heavy with the scent of age. Dust-covered toys lay scattered on the floor, and a rocking chair swayed gently in the corner, despite the stillness of the room. On the wall hung a faded mural of children playing, an eerie contrast to the chilling atmosphere. As we stepped inside, the whispers stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the corner, a woman dressed in a flowing white gown, her long hair cascading over her shoulders. She was gazing out the window, lost in a world of her own. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I am Isabella Ravenswood," she replied, her voice soft yet filled with anguish. "This is my home, but it has been tainted by tragedy. Why are you still here?" Kate asked, her eyes wide with empathy. "I cannot leave this place," Isabella replied, her gaze distant. "I lost my child and my husband in a desperate attempt to communicate with Samuel. Now, I am trapped in a cycle of grief. What can we do to help you? I asked, feeling a surge of determination. There is a way to break the curse, Isabella said, her voice growing stronger. You must confront the darkness that lingers in the cellar. It is there that my spirit remains tethered to this world. Lead us there, Michael said, stepping forward. Isabella gestured toward the door, and we followed her down the hallway, our hearts racing with both fear and anticipation. As we descended the stairs to the cellar, the air grew colder, and an unsettling energy enveloped us. The cellar door creaked open, revealing a dark, damp room filled with shadows. In the center stood an altar adorned with strange symbols and remnants of rituals long past. This is where it happened, Isabella whispered, her expression pained. We need to perform a cleansing ritual, I said, recalling what I had read about breaking curses. Are you sure we can do? Nestled in a secluded valley, Blackwood Manor had long been the subject of whispered tales and chilling legends. The grand estate, with its towering spires and intricate stonework, stood proudly against the backdrop of the ancient forest surrounding it. Once the home of the affluent Blackwood family, the manor was now an imposing relic of the past, cloaked in an air of mystery and foreboding. Its once vibrant gardens lay overgrown and wild, mirroring the curse that had plagued the family for generations. The story of Blackwood Manor began in the early 1800s when Lord Nathaniel Blackwood, a prosperous landowner, commissioned the construction of the estate. Nathaniel was known for his ruthless business dealings and fierce ambition, which earned him both respect and disdain in the local community. His wife, Lady Margaret, was the epitome of grace and beauty, beloved by the townspeople. Together, they had 2 children, Edward and Eliza, who were the light of their lives. However, the family's seemingly perfect existence was shattered when tragedy struck. On a stormy night, while Nathaniel was away on business, a fire broke out in the manor. The flames raged uncontrollably, consuming everything in their path. The townspeople rushed to help, but the fire claimed the lives of both Margaret and Eliza. Edward, who had been away at school, returned to find his home reduced to ashes and his family gone. Devastated by the loss, Edward inherited the manor, but the joy of his inheritance was overshadowed by grief. As he wandered through the charred remains of his childhood home, he became obsessed with uncovering the truth behind the fire. Rumors circulated that the blaze had been no accident, that someone had set it deliberately to destroy the Blackwood family. Consumed by the need for vengeance, Edward turned to the occult, seeking dark knowledge that would aid him in his quest. In his relentless pursuit of revenge, Edward delved into forbidden texts and conducted rituals in the depths of the manor. He summoned spirits and consulted with mediums, desperate for answers. The atmosphere of the house shifted. Shadows deepened, and whispers echoed through the halls. The townspeople began to avoid Blackwood Manor, fearful of the dark energy that surrounded it. One fateful night, during a particularly powerful storm, Edward conducted a ritual to summon the spirit of his mother. As he chanted incantations in the dimly lit parlor, a chilling wind swept through the room, extinguishing the candles and plunging him into darkness. The air crackled with energy as a figure materialized before him. Lady Margaret, her face twisted in anguish. "Edward, you must stop this," she implored, her voice barely a whisper. "You are inviting darkness into this home." But Edward was consumed by rage and sorrow. "I will find out who did this to us," he shouted, his voice echoing in the silence. "I will make them pay." The specter of his mother reached out to him, her expression filled with pain. "Your thirst for vengeance will only bring more tragedy. You must let go." Ignoring her warning, Edward continued his dark rituals, unwittingly binding himself to the spirits he sought to control. The energy within the manor shifted, becoming increasingly malevolent. Night after night, he would hear whispers calling his name, taunting him with the promise of power and revenge. The line between the living and the dead began to blur, and Edward found himself spiraling into madness. As the years passed, the curse of Blackwood Manor tightened its grip on Edward. The once grand estate became a prison, its walls echoing with the cries of lost souls. The townspeople spoke of dark figures seen wandering the grounds, and those who dared approach the manor reported feeling an overwhelming sense of dread. Edward's obsession consumed him, and he became a recluse, shunned by the very community he had once been a part of. In his isolation, Edward stumbled upon an ancient grimoire, a book said to contain the secrets of life and death. Believing it held the key to bringing back his mother and sister, he pored over its pages, drawing him further into the abyss. The final ritual was to take place on the anniversary of the fire, when the veil between the worlds was thinnest. On that fateful night, a heavy fog rolled into the valley, wrapping the manor in an eerie shroud. Edward gathered the last of his strength, determined to resurrect his family. As he chanted the incantations, the ground beneath him trembled, and the air grew thick with tension. Shadows danced in the corners of the room, swirling in response to his dark magic. In a moment of blinding light, the figures of Margaret and Eliza appeared before him. "Edward," they cried, their voices filled with both longing and sorrow. "What have you done?" "I have brought you back," Edward shouted, tears streaming down his face. "We can be a family again." But the spirits were not the ones he remembered. Their forms flickered, twisted by the dark energy he had summoned. "You cannot bring us back," Margaret said, her voice strained. "You have unleashed forces beyond your control." In that instant, the room erupted into chaos. The walls trembled as dark energy surged, and a cacophony of voices filled the air, drowning out Edward's pleas. The shadows coalesced into a monstrous entity, a manifestation of Edward's own grief and anger. "You have awakened me," it roared, the sound reverberating through the manor. "No," Edward screamed, but it was too late. The entity lunged at him, wrapping its tendrils around him, pulling him into the darkness. The last thing he heard was the cries of his mother and sister, fading into the void as the manor collapsed in on itself. When the townspeople arrived the next day, they found Blackwood Manor reduced to rubble. All that remained were whispers of the tragedy that had unfolded, a warning to anyone who dared to seek revenge and the price of meddling with dark forces. The land was left cursed, a shadow of its former glory. Years passed, and the tale of Blackwood Manor faded into legend. Locals spoke of the haunted grounds, warning those who ventured too close. They claimed to hear the sounds of children laughing and the cries of a man lost to his madness. Some said that on stormy nights, the figure of a woman could be seen wandering the ruins, searching for her lost family. It was during one particularly stormy evening that my friends, Ryan, Lily, and Alex, decided to explore the remnants of Blackwood Manor. The storm raged outside, the wind howling as we made our way down the overgrown path leading to the ruins. "Are we really going to do this?" Lily asked, her voice shaking with a mix of excitement and fear. "Of course. What's the worst that could happen?" Ryan replied, though I could sense his own apprehension. As we approached the site of the manor, the atmosphere grew heavier. The air was thick with an unnatural energy, and an overwhelming sense of foreboding hung over us. The remnants of the once grand estate lay before us, charred beams and crumbling walls, all draped in shadows. "This place feels wrong," I whispered, glancing at my friends. "Let's just be careful," Alex suggested, his flashlight beam dancing over the rubble. We wandered through the remnants, taking in the eerie silence that surrounded us. As we reached what was once the grand entrance, the wind picked up and an icy chill enveloped us. "Did you feel that?" Lily asked, her breath visible in the cold air. "Yeah, it's freezing," Ryan replied, shivering. Suddenly, a distant laughter echoed through the ruins, causing us to freeze in place. "What was that?" I asked, my heart racing. "Probably just the wind," Alex said, though his voice betrayed his uncertainty. "Let's check it out," Lily suggested, her curiosity piqued. We cautiously followed the sound, winding through the debris. As we turned a corner, we stumbled upon a clearing where a large oak tree stood, its branches reaching out like skeletal hands. Beneath the tree lay a weathered wooden swing, swaying gently despite the lack of wind. "This is creepy," Ryan said, stepping closer. Just then, the laughter echoed again, this time clearer, more insistent. "It sounds like children," I whispered, feeling a chill run down my spine. "Should we leave?" Alex asked, his voice trembling. "No, we have to find out what it is," I insisted, driven by a mix of fear and intrigue. As we approached the swing, the laughter intensified, filling the air with an unsettling energy. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the clearing, and the laughter turned into cries, a mixture of joy and sorrow that resonated deep within our souls. "Help us!" the voices called, their cries haunting and desperate. "Who are you?" Lily called out, her voice trembling. In response, the figure of a girl appeared before us, her dress tattered and her face streaked with dirt. "Please, help us," she pleaded, her eyes wide with fear. "We're trapped here." "Trapped? By who?" Ryan asked, stepping forward. "The Dark Man," the girl replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "He took us from our home, and now we can't leave." The realization hit us like a cold wave. "Are you Eliza?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. The girl nodded, her expression filled with sorrow. "You must help us break the curse. We need to confront the darkness in the ruins of our home." Without a moment's hesitation. Willow Creek Manor was a beautiful estate nestled among rolling hills and vast fields of wildflowers, yet its elegance belied a tragic past. Built in the mid-1800s by the affluent Harrington family, the manor was the epitome of wealth and sophistication. With its tall chimneys, sprawling gardens, and lavish ballrooms, it was the pride of the community. However, the very walls of the manor held secrets that would chill even the bravest of souls. The Harringtons were known for their extravagant parties, where the town's elite would gather to dance and socialize under sparkling chandeliers. The centerpiece of these events was the enchanting music played by young Lydia Harrington, a talented pianist whose melodies captivated all who heard them. Lydia was the apple of her parents' eyes and was often lauded for her beauty and grace. However, tragedy struck on the eve of Lydia's 18th birthday. The family had planned a grand celebration, and the manor was adorned with flowers and lights. But as the guests arrived, a thick fog rolled in from the hills, enveloping Willow Creek in an eerie stillness. Lydia, excited for the festivities, sat at the grand piano in the parlor, ready to perform her favorite pieces. As the clock struck midnight, a sudden crash of thunder echoed through the house, followed by a loud scream. The guests rushed to the source of the noise, only to find Lydia's father, Thomas Harrington, lying lifeless at the foot of the grand staircase, a look of terror etched on his face. Panic ensued, and the party quickly turned into chaos. The townspeople speculated that Thomas had seen something in the shadows before his fall, something that had terrified him to death. The family was devastated. Lydia's mother, Eleanor, fell into a deep depression, and Lydia found solace only in her music. Yet, as she played, a haunting melody began to emerge, one that echoed the sorrow of the family. Some claimed that when Lydia played, the house itself seemed to respond, as if the walls were absorbing her grief. In the weeks that followed, strange occurrences began to unfold within the manor. The once vibrant music transformed into dissonant echoes that filled the hallways at night. Guests reported seeing shadows darting through the rooms, and the air grew thick with an unshakable sense of dread. Whispers of a curse began to circulate, suggesting that Thomas Harrington's death was linked to a family secret hidden within the manor. Determined to uncover the truth, Lydia delved into her family's history, poring over old letters and diaries. She discovered that her ancestors had built the manor on land once inhabited by an indigenous tribe who had suffered greatly at the hands of the Harringtons. Legends spoke of a vengeful spirit seeking retribution for the pain inflicted upon its people. As Lydia unraveled the dark history of her family, she realized that her father's death was just the beginning. The night of her 18th birthday marked the anniversary of a pact made generations ago. A pact that bound the Harringtons to the land but came at a terrible cost. Every generation would suffer a tragedy until the wrongs of the past were righted. One stormy night, Lydia resolved to confront the spirit that haunted her family. Armed with a candle and her father's diary, she descended into the depths of the manor, where the cellar lay hidden. As she navigated the dark, narrow passage, The air grew heavy with anticipation. Shadows flickered in the candlelight, and whispers echoed in the corners, urging her to turn back. Ignoring the warnings, Lydia pressed on, her heart pounding in her chest. She found herself in a dimly lit room filled with dust and cobwebs, remnants of a forgotten era. In the center stood a weathered altar, adorned with trinkets and offerings left by those who sought to appease the spirits. Lydia felt a chill run down her spine as she approached the altar, her instincts screaming at her to leave. "Who dares enter my domain?" A voice boomed, reverberating through the cellar. Lydia whirled around, her candle flickering as the shadows coalesced into a figure. A tall, spectral presence with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce through her very soul. "I am Lydia Harrington," she said, her voice trembling. "I seek to understand the curse that plagues my family." The spirit let out a low, rumbling laugh. "Your family has stained this land with blood. You cannot comprehend the pain that has been inflicted. What can I do to end it?" Lydia pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. "To break the curse, you must make amends for the sins of your ancestors," the spirit replied, its voice echoing like thunder. "Only then will the souls be freed." With newfound determination, Lydia vowed to honor the spirit and make amends. She returned to the surface, gathering her strength and resolve. In the days that followed, she organized a gathering to honor the memories of those lost, both her family and the indigenous people who once called the land home. The night of the gathering arrived, and the manor was alive with flickering candlelight and the gentle sound of a drum. Lydia stood before the gathered crowd, her heart racing. "Tonight, we honor those who have suffered," she declared, her voice steady. "We seek to heal the wounds of the past and forge a new path forward." As she spoke, a sudden gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing the candles and plunging them into darkness. The air crackled with energy as the spirit of her father materialized before her. "Lydia, you are brave," he said, his voice filled with pride. "But the path to redemption is fraught with challenges. I will face whatever it takes," Lydia vowed, her heart pounding with conviction. "Remember, the spirits of the land are listening," Thomas warned, his figure flickering like a candle flame. "You must act with sincerity and respect." With those words, he faded into the shadows, leaving Lydia filled with determination. As she led the gathering in songs and prayers, a transformation began to unfold. The once stagnant air grew lighter, and a warmth enveloped the room. Whispers of gratitude filled the space as the spirits responded to Lydia's plea. Yet, as dawn broke over Willow Creek Manor, the curse was not yet broken. Lydia felt a heavy weight still linger, a sense that the spirits were not entirely at peace. Seeking answers, she returned to the cellar, hoping to commune once more with the spirit that had warned her. "Have I done enough?" she called into the darkness. "You have taken the first step," the spirit replied, its presence looming before her. "But there are still debts to pay." Confused and desperate, Lydia asked, "What do you require of me?" "The land must be healed. You must confront those who would continue the cycle of pain," the spirit warned. "Only then will the curse be lifted." Realizing the truth in the spirit's words, Lydia understood that she needed to confront not just her family's history, but the modern injustices that still plagued the land. Armed with newfound courage, she organized a community meeting, inviting both locals and descendants of the indigenous tribe to gather and share their stories. The meeting was emotional and raw, as stories of loss and healing poured forth. Lydia listened intently, absorbing the pain and resilience of those around her. As they shared, a sense of unity began to blossom, an understanding that healing required acknowledgement and empathy. Yet, the night took a darker turn as those resistant to change arrived. A group of local businessmen, protective of their interests, stormed into the meeting, their anger palpable. "This land belongs to us now," one of them shouted. "You can't change the past." Lydia stood firm, refusing to back down. "We must recognize the hurt we've caused and find a way to heal together," she argued passionately. The tension in the room escalated, and Lydia felt the energy shift as the spirits responded to the discord. Shadows flickered and whispers grew louder, echoing the struggle between the past and the present. Suddenly, A blinding light filled the space, and the spirit of Lydia's mother appeared, radiating a calming presence. "Enough!" Eleanor's voice rang out, silencing the chaos. "You cannot deny the truth of the past. Healing begins with acknowledgement, and only then can you find peace." With Eleanor's intervention, the crowd fell silent, the anger dissipating. Lydia seized the moment, her voice steady. "We can honor the land and its history together. Let us find a way to coexist and mend the wounds." The businessmen exchanged uneasy glances, their resolve wavering. "Perhaps we've been too quick to dismiss the past," one of them admitted, his voice softer now. As discussions continued, the spirit of the land began to shift, responding to the emerging unity. A warmth filled the room, washing away the lingering shadows. Lydia felt the curse begin to lift, and for the first time, hope flickered within her heart. In the weeks that followed, Willow Creek Manor transformed into a symbol of healing and resilience. The community came together to restore the estate, planting gardens and hosting events that celebrated the history of the land. The stories of the Harringtons and the indigenous people intertwined, forging a new narrative of understanding and respect. Yet, as Lydia stood in the gardens one evening, she couldn't shake the feeling that the spirits were still watching over her, guiding her every step. The whispers that had once filled the halls of the manor faded into a gentle melody, a reminder of the past and the importance of remembrance. In the years that followed, Willow Creek Manor became a place of refuge and healing, where people gathered to share stories and celebrate the beauty of the land. The laughter of children echoed. Hollow Hill House stood atop a knoll, overlooking the quiet village of Millfield. With its weathered stone facade and ivy-clad walls, the mansion exuded an aura of mystery and age. Once a thriving estate owned by the enigmatic Harrington family, the house was now a relic of the past, shrouded in tales of misfortune and despair. The villagers whispered of its cursed history, but the allure of the manor's secrets drew many curious souls. The Harringtons were well-respected members of the community, known for their philanthropic endeavors and grand parties. The family matriarch, Lady Isolde Harrington, was particularly beloved for her kindness and compassion. She often organized charity events to help the less fortunate in Millfield. But despite their public persona, a shadow loomed over the Harringtons, a tragedy that would forever mark their lineage. The story began when Lady Isolde gave birth to her first child, a son named Thomas. Joy filled the halls of Hollow Hill House as the family celebrated the arrival of their heir. However, the bliss was short-lived. Shortly after his birth, Thomas fell gravely ill. Lady Isolde sought every remedy, consulting renowned physicians and herbalists, yet nothing seemed to work. As the weeks dragged on, the house grew heavy with despair. In her desperation, Isolde turned to the village's old folk for advice. They spoke of ancient rituals and the need to appease the spirits that lingered near the house. In a moment of despair, Isolde invited a local healer, known for her knowledge of the arcane, to conduct a ritual in the hopes of saving her child. The healer arrived, clad in a long, flowing cloak adorned with strange symbols. She examined the baby, her eyes filled with a mixture of pity and something darker. "Your child is in danger," the healer warned. "The spirits are restless. They demand a sacrifice to be appeased." Isolde, terrified and desperate, asked what she must do. The healer's answer sent chills down her spine. "A life must be given to save a life," she said. "You must choose." Faced with an impossible decision, Isolde fell into despair. She could not fathom sacrificing another for her son's life. Yet the thought of losing him was unbearable. Days turned into sleepless nights as she pondered the healer's words, trapped in a web of grief and guilt. Finally, in the depths of her despair, Isolde made a fateful choice. She would perform the ritual as instructed, believing it would save her beloved Thomas. On the night of the ritual, she lit candles around the grand parlor, casting shadows that danced across the walls. She placed a lock of her hair, along with a small doll that belonged to her son, on the altar, a symbol of her sacrifice. As she chanted the incantations taught to her by the healer, the air grew thick with tension. The room vibrated with energy, and the flickering candles flickered ominously. A gust of wind rushed through the house, extinguishing the flames and plunging Isolde into darkness. In that moment, a figure appeared before her, a tall, shadowy presence with eyes like burning coals. "You have summoned me," it growled, its voice a low rumble. "What do you seek?" "I seek to save my son," Isolde cried, tears streaming down her face. "Please, I will do anything." The figure loomed closer, and Isolde felt the chill of its presence. "A sacrifice has been made," it hissed, "but the price will be steep. You will lose what you hold most dear." "Anything," she screamed, desperation filling her voice. With a cruel smile, the spirit nodded. "Very well. Your son will live, but you shall be cursed to live in torment, haunted by your choice." The air crackled as the spirit vanished, leaving Isolde alone in the darkness. In the days that followed, Thomas's health improved, and soon he was a thriving child. Yet, the joy of his recovery was overshadowed by the heavy burden of guilt that settled upon Isolde's shoulders. As the years passed, Hollow Hill House became a shadow of its former self. Isolde, once the epitome of grace and warmth, grew distant and withdrawn. The villagers noticed the change in her demeanor, whispering of the curse that had befallen her family. Rumors circulated that the house itself had become a prison for the spirits Isolde had angered. Thomas, unaware of the darkness that surrounded his mother, grew into a strong young man. However, the curse that hung over their family began to reveal its true nature. Tragedy struck once again when Thomas, now a handsome young man, fell in love with a local girl named Eliza. Their love blossomed, but Isolde's jealousy and despair loomed over them like a dark cloud. In a moment of rage, Isolde confronted Eliza, warning her to stay away from her son. "You do not understand the curse that haunts this house," she cried. "You will bring ruin upon us both." Eliza, frightened by Isolde's outburst, ended her relationship with Thomas, believing it was for the best. Heartbroken, Thomas pleaded with his mother to mend the rift, but Isolde's mind was clouded with grief and despair. She became convinced that Eliza was a threat, someone who could expose the darkness that haunted their family. Determined to protect her son, Isolde sought the healer once more. However, the healer had vanished, leaving only rumors of her dark practices. Desperate for answers, Isolde turned to dark magic, hoping to rid her family of the curse that had ensnared them for so long. As Isolde delved deeper into the occult, strange occurrences plagued Hollow Hill House. The walls whispered her name, shadows flitted through the rooms, and the once harmonious music of the home became twisted and discordant. Thomas, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, grew increasingly worried for his mother. One fateful night, while Thomas was away, Isolde performed a final ritual in the heart of the manor. She lit candles and drew symbols on the floor, desperate to banish the darkness that clung to her. As she chanted, a cacophony of voices erupted around her, echoing with anguish and despair. "You cannot escape your fate," they cried. "The curse shall never be lifted." The room trembled as the shadows coalesced into a massive figure, a grotesque manifestation of Isolde's guilt and sorrow. "You have summoned me," it boomed, its voice a chilling echo. "You are bound to this place, forever trapped in your own darkness." "No," Isolde screamed, her heart pounding in her chest. "I will not be bound. I did what I had to do." The figure laughed, a sound that sent chills down her spine. "Your choices have consequences, Isolde Harrington. You cannot outrun your past." As the spirit advanced, the candles flickered wildly, and Isolde felt the walls closing in around her. The house shook violently, and she was thrown to the ground as the darkness consumed her. In that moment, the reality of her curse became clear. She was forever tied to the anguish she had caused. When Thomas returned home, he found Hollow Hill House in ruins. The air was thick with despair, and the shadows danced eerily in the moonlight. As he searched for his mother, he stumbled upon the remnants of her ritual. The candles melted, the symbols scorched into the floorboards. Panic gripped him as he called out for Isolde, his voice echoing through the empty halls. "Mother, where are you?" he shouted, but only silence responded. Days turned into weeks, and Thomas's heart ached with the loss of his mother. The villagers, witnessing the decline of Hollow Hill House, whispered of the Harrington curse, warning one another to stay away from the desolate estate. Desperate to uncover the truth, Thomas delved into the history of the house and his family. He discovered the tale of the healer and the ancient pact made by his mother. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he knew he had to confront the darkness that had claimed his family. One stormy night, Thomas returned to the mansion, armed with the knowledge he had gathered. As thunder rumbled and lightning illuminated the sky, he made his way to the cellar, where the ritual had taken place. The air crackled with energy, and the shadows seemed to whisper his name. "Isolde," he called, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped him. "I have come to find you." As he descended into the darkness, a cold wind rushed past him, and the spirit of his mother appeared, her face twisted in sorrow. "Thomas, you must leave this place," she pleaded. "The curse is too strong." "No, mother," he replied, determination in his eyes. "I cannot abandon you. I will break this curse. You do not understand the darkness that binds us," Isolde cried. "It will consume you." But Thomas refused to back down. "I know what you did," he said, his voice resolute. "You sacrificed a life to save mine. It's time to confront the consequences together." With that, he began to chant the words he had uncovered, a mixture of his mother's spells and the ancient prayers of the villagers. The air thickened as shadows writhed around him, swirling in response to his call. The spirit of the house trembled, caught between the two forces. As he spoke the final words, a blinding light erupted from within, illuminating the darkness that had consumed Hollow Hill House for so long. The shadows screamed, writhing as the energy surged through the room. Thomas felt the presence of the spirits around him, their anguish merging with his resolve. "Release her," he shouted, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Let my mother be free." In a final surge of power, the darkness recoiled, revealing the figure of the healer who had set this tragedy in motion. "Foolish boy," she sneered, her eyes burning with malice. "You think you can undo what has been done?" But Thomas stood firm, his heart filled with love for his mother. "I will not allow you to keep her in torment any longer." With a final chant, the light engulfed the room, and the oppressive darkness began to fade. The spirits surged forward, drawn to the light, their anguished cries turning to whispers of gratitude. The healer's face twisted in rage as the energy consumed her, and with one last scream, she vanished into the ether. As the shadows dissipated, Isolde fell to her knees, the weight of her choices lifting. "You did it, my son," she wept, relief flooding her voice. "You freed us." Together, they stood in the remnants of Hollow Hill House, the air lighter and the oppressive energy lifted. The curse that had haunted their family for generations had finally been broken. In that moment, they knew they could begin anew, unshackled from the chains of the past. With the dawn of a new day, Thomas and Isolde emerged from the darkness of Hollow Hill House. As the sun rose, illuminating the path ahead, they embraced, knowing that their bond would never be broken. Together, they would rebuild, not just the house but the love and compassion that had once defined their family. As the villagers looked upon Hollow Hill House, they felt a shift in the air. The tales of the curse began to fade, replaced by stories of resilience and redemption. The mansion, once a symbol of despair, became a beacon of hope, a testament to the strength of love and the power of forgiveness. From that day forward, Hollow Hill House stood as a reminder that even in the darkest of times, light could emerge. The echoes of laughter and music returned to its halls, replacing the whispers of sorrow. And as Thomas and Isolde welcomed a new generation into their home, they knew that their family would carry the legacy of their ancestors, forever entwined with the spirit of the land. Nestled deep in the heart of the countryside, surrounded by ancient oaks and winding paths, Willow Creek Manor had always been a place of beauty. With its sprawling gardens, a charming pond, and elegant architecture, it looked like something straight out of a storybook. However, beneath its picturesque facade lay a dark history that few dared to speak of. Willow Creek Manor was built in the late 1800s by the affluent Barrow family. The family was known for their lavish parties and charitable contributions to the community. Yet, as time went on, a series of tragic events began to unfold, casting a long shadow over the estate. It all began with Eleanor Barrow, the youngest daughter of the family. Eleanor was a free spirit with dreams of becoming an artist. She spent hours wandering the gardens, sketching the beauty that surrounded her. But despite her passion, her family pressured her to marry a wealthy suitor. They believed it would secure their status and fortune. However, Eleanor's heart belonged to another, a local artist named Thomas. Eleanor and Thomas would sneak away to a hidden glen near the manor, where they could dream about a future together. But when Eleanor's family discovered her secret, they were furious. They forbade her from seeing Thomas and arranged for her to marry a wealthy man from a neighboring town. Heartbroken and desperate, Eleanor sought solace in her art. She poured her emotions into her paintings, capturing the beauty of the world around her. But the more she painted, the more the weight of her family's expectations crushed her spirit. On the eve of her arranged marriage, Eleanor made a bold decision. She would flee the manor and elope with Thomas. That night, under the cover of darkness, she slipped away from her family's home, determined to find her true love. But fate had other plans. As Eleanor made her way to the hidden glen, a violent storm erupted. The winds howled, and rain fell in torrents. She stumbled through the woods, her heart racing as she searched for the path. In her haste, she lost her footing and fell into the swollen creek. The next morning, the townspeople found Eleanor's lifeless body washed ashore. The tragedy sent shockwaves through the community, and her family was devastated. In their grief, they blamed Thomas for her death, believing he had lured her away. The Barrow family forbade him from coming near the manor, and he vanished from the village, leaving only memories of the love they once shared. In the following years, the Barrow family fell into disarray. The once vibrant home became a place of sorrow and regret. The remaining family members reported strange occurrences within the manor. Whispers echoing through the halls, the sound of footsteps when no one was there, and shadows darting past windows. Villagers began to avoid the estate, convinced it was cursed. As time passed, the manor fell into disrepair. Vines crept up the walls, and the gardens turned wild. The legacy of the Barrow family faded, but the stories of Eleanor's tragic fate persisted, passed down from generation to generation. Many years later, a young couple named Sarah and Mark moved to the village. Eager for a fresh start, they were drawn to the charm of Willow Creek Manor. The locals warned them about the house's haunted reputation, but the couple dismissed the stories as mere superstition. With dreams of restoring the manor to its former glory, Sarah and Mark set to work. As they painted the walls and repaired the roof, they felt a strange presence in the house. At first, it was just an unsettling feeling, like someone was watching them. But as they settled into their new home, the disturbances grew more pronounced. One evening, while unpacking boxes in the attic, Sarah stumbled upon an old trunk covered in dust. Inside, she found a collection of Eleanor's paintings, vivid landscapes and haunting portraits that seemed to come alive on the canvas. Captivated, Sarah hung one of the paintings in their bedroom, feeling an unexplainable connection to the artist. That night, as they prepared for bed, Sarah felt a cold breeze sweep through the room. The air grew heavy, and the lights flickered. "Did you feel that?" she asked Mark, her heart racing. He nodded, unease creeping into his voice. "Yeah, it feels like someone is here." Later, as they lay in bed, a soft whisper echoed through the room. "Help me," it said, barely audible but distinct. Sarah sat up, startled. "Did you hear that?" Mark nodded, his expression tense. It sounded like a woman. Determined to uncover the truth behind the disturbances, Sarah began researching the history of Willow Creek Manor. She discovered the tale of Eleanor Barrow and her tragic fate. The more she learned, the more she felt a connection to the lost artist. That night, Sarah decided to hang more of Eleanor's paintings throughout the house, believing it might bring peace to the restless spirit. As she hung the final piece in the living room, she felt a sudden chill in the air, and the lights flickered again. This time, She could almost hear the soft sound of weeping. "Eleanor," Sarah whispered, feeling an overwhelming sadness wash over her. "What happened to you?" In that moment, she realized that Eleanor was trapped, unable to move on from her tragic fate. Sarah resolved to help her, believing that if she could bring closure to Eleanor's spirit, the disturbances would cease. Over the next few weeks, Sarah and Mark began to experience more vivid interactions with the spirit. They often found objects misplaced, heard footsteps echoing through the halls, and occasionally caught glimpses of a shadowy figure out of the corner of their eyes. They would sometimes hear soft weeping coming from the attic, leading them to believe that Eleanor was still mourning her lost love. One night, as the couple sat in the living room, they felt an intense chill sweep through the room. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew through the windows, rattling the glass. The lights flickered wildly, and then they went out entirely. In the darkness, Sarah felt an overwhelming presence in the room. "Eleanor," she called, her voice trembling. "Is that you?" A soft voice whispered in the darkness. "Help me." Heart pounding, Sarah felt an urge to comfort the spirit. "What can we do for you? How can we help you find peace?" For a moment, there was silence. Then, the room grew colder, and the sound of footsteps echoed through the hall. The couple exchanged nervous glances, sensing the spirit's urgency. Sarah took a deep breath. "We will help you, I promise." The next day, Sarah visited the local library to learn more about Eleanor and Thomas's story. She found old newspaper clippings detailing their tragic love, the disapproval of Eleanor's family, and the heart-wrenching aftermath of her death. The articles mentioned a secret letter Eleanor had written to Thomas the night she planned to elope. "Maybe if we find that letter, we can give Eleanor closure," Sarah said, excitement coursing through her veins. Mark nodded, eager to help. That evening, the couple returned to the attic, armed with flashlights. They scoured the old trunk where Sarah had found Eleanor's paintings, hoping to discover the elusive letter. As they rummaged through the old clothes and trinkets, Sarah's fingers brushed against a piece of paper tucked away in a forgotten corner. "Here it is," she exclaimed, pulling it out with trembling hands. The paper was yellowed and fragile, the ink faded but legible. It was a love letter, filled with Eleanor's dreams of a life with Thomas, expressing her longing and desire to escape her family's control. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes as she read the heartfelt words aloud. "I wish for the day I can be free and love who I choose," she recited, feeling the weight of Eleanor's emotions. "I long to be with you, Thomas. I will find a way." As the final words left her lips, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The air thickened, and the presence of Eleanor grew stronger. The lights flickered back to life, illuminating the attic, and a sense of peace washed over Sarah. "Eleanor, we found your letter," Sarah said, her voice filled with compassion. "You are free to love who you choose. You don't have to be trapped anymore." Suddenly, a warm breeze filled the room, enveloping Sarah and Mark. They felt a comforting presence surround them, and the whispers of anguish faded into a gentle sigh of relief. In that moment, they knew they had connected with Eleanor's spirit, and she had heard them. As the wind died down, the couple felt a warmth in their hearts. They knew that they had brought closure to Eleanor's troubled spirit. That night, as they lay in bed, they heard no whispers or footsteps, only the soft rustle of the leaves outside. In the following weeks, the atmosphere in Willow Creek Manor transformed. The oppressive weight of sorrow lifted, and the once haunted house became a sanctuary of warmth and love. The couple continued their renovations, and soon, the manor bloomed with life. Word of the couple's renovations spread through the village, and the townspeople began to visit. They admired the restoration of the manor and shared tales of Eleanor's tragic love. Sarah and Mark hosted gatherings, celebrating the legacy of the Barrow family while honoring the memory of Eleanor. One evening, during a garden party, a local historian spoke of the tale of Eleanor and Thomas. Their love story was one of passion and tragedy, he explained, his voice filled with reverence. But thanks to the dedication of this young couple, we can remember Eleanor's spirit in a new light. As the sun set, in a small, secluded town, just beyond the thick veil of towering trees and mist-laden hills, lay Blackwood Hollow, a name whispered among the villagers with a mixture of fear and intrigue. The hollow was home to an old mansion, long abandoned, yet brimming with tales of misfortune and a dark curse that had befallen the land. The mansion, known as Blackwood Manor, was built in the early 1900s by the wealthy Blackwood family. They were known for their opulence and grand celebrations, hosting extravagant parties that drew attention from miles around. However, the family's good fortune was short-lived. Rumors began to circulate about the mysterious deaths that plagued the household, one after another, leaving the town in shock and the family in despair. The tragedy began with the family's matriarch, Lady Eleanor Blackwood. She was a woman of striking beauty and grace, beloved by many in the community. One fateful evening, during a grand ball, she collapsed on the dance floor, succumbing to a sudden illness that no doctor could diagnose. The townsfolk whispered about a curse, one that had followed the Blackwoods for generations. Following Lady Eleanor's death, her husband, Lord William Blackwood, fell into a deep depression. He was seen wandering the estate, lost in his grief, until one stormy night he vanished without a trace. The townspeople believed he had gone mad, succumbing to the curse that haunted the family. As the years passed, the remaining members of the Blackwood family faced similar fates. Their son, Charles, was found dead in the woods surrounding the manor, an apparent victim of an accidental fall. The daughter, Margaret, died in a mysterious fire that consumed the west wing of the mansion, and the last remaining heir, young Jonathan, vanished on his way to school, never to be seen again. With each tragedy, the manor fell deeper into disrepair, the once grand estate now a crumbling shell of its former glory. The townsfolk avoided it, fearing the curse that seemed to cling to its walls. It became a place of nightmares, and children dared each other to approach its iron gates, only to flee in terror at the slightest rustle of the wind. Years turned into decades, and Blackwood Manor became a ghost story, fading into the background of town lore. But for Lily, a curious teenager with an adventurous spirit, the tales of Blackwood Hollow were more than just stories. She had grown up listening to her grandmother's warnings about the cursed mansion and felt an irresistible pull to uncover the truth behind the legends. One summer evening, with the sun dipping below the horizon and a full moon rising, Lily gathered her friends. Ben, a brave but skeptical soul, and Mia, the superstitious one. They decided to explore Blackwood Hollow, driven by a mix of curiosity and excitement. Armed with flashlights and a sense of adventure, they set out on their bikes, the wind whispering secrets through the trees. As they approached the mansion, an eerie silence enveloped them. The air felt heavy, and the shadows danced around the crumbling facade. "Are you sure about this?" Ben asked, eyeing the rotting doors with trepidation. "What if we disturb something we shouldn't?" "Oh, come on," Lily replied, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "It's just an old house. We'll be fine. Besides, I want to find out what really happened to the Blackwood family." Mia shivered, glancing back toward the town. "I heard that if you step inside, you might never come out," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Ignoring Mia's warnings, Lily pushed open the heavy doors, which creaked ominously. The interior was cloaked in dust, cobwebs hanging like curtains from the ceilings. Moonlight streamed through broken windows, illuminating the grand staircase that spiraled upward. "Let's split up and see what we can find," Lily suggested, unable to contain her excitement. "We'll meet back here in an hour." With a nod of agreement, the three friends ventured deeper into the mansion. Lily headed toward the drawing room, where faded portraits of the Blackwood family lined the walls. Their eyes seemed to follow her as she moved, a chill running down her spine. She reached out to touch a frame, but as she did, a sudden gust of wind blew through the room, extinguishing her flashlight. "Ben? Mia?" she called, panic rising in her chest. But the only response was silence. Lily fumbled in the dark, her heart racing. She felt a strange sensation, as if someone was watching her. Gathering her courage, she turned to leave, but as she did, she caught sight of something out of the corner of her eye, a shadow flickering near the doorway. "Is someone there?" she asked, her voice trembling. The shadow vanished, leaving only darkness behind. She hurried to the door, her pulse pounding in her ears. As she stepped into the hallway, she heard a distant sobbing echoing through the mansion. "Mia," she called, hope flooding her voice. "Is that you?" But there was no answer. The sobbing continued, growing louder, more anguished. Lily followed the sound, her feet carrying her toward a room at the end of the hall. She opened the door slowly, revealing a dusty bedroom filled with old furniture draped in white sheets. In the corner stood a figure, a woman in a flowing gown, her back turned to Lily. "Excuse me?" Lily ventured, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you okay?" The figure turned slowly, revealing a face twisted with sorrow. "Help me," the woman implored, her voice filled with despair. "They won't let me go." Lily's heart sank. "Who won't let you go?" she asked, stepping closer. "The Blackwood family," the woman replied, her eyes brimming with tears. "I was their servant. I saw everything, but they cursed me to remain here." Lily felt a cold chill in the air. "What happened to you?" The woman took a deep breath, her gaze distant. "I was loyal to them, but when Lady Eleanor died, they turned on me, blaming me for her death. I tried to help her, but they wouldn't listen. Now, I am trapped here, bound by their sorrow." As the woman spoke, Lily felt a surge of empathy. "I'm here now," she promised. "I'll help you find peace." The woman looked at her, hope flickering in her eyes. "You must uncover the truth. Only then can I be free." Lily nodded, determination coursing through her veins. "I will. I promise." Suddenly, she heard Ben's voice calling from the hallway. "Lily, where are you?" "I'm in here," she yelled. But the moment she turned back to the woman, she had vanished. The room was empty once more. Ben and Mia rushed in, their faces pale. "What happened?" Ben asked, worry etched on his features. "We heard a scream. I met someone," Lily stammered, her heart still racing. "She said she was a servant of the Blackwoods. She needs our help." "What do you mean?" Mia asked, glancing around the room. "Are you sure it wasn't a ghost?" Lily explained everything, her friends listening intently. "We need to find out what really happened to the Blackwood family," she insisted. "There has to be something here." Mia shivered. "I don't know, guys. This place gives me the creeps." But Ben seemed intrigued. "Let's look for clues. If we can piece together their story, maybe we can break the curse." The trio split up once again, searching through the dusty remnants of the mansion. They combed through old books, letters, and dusty portraits, hoping to uncover the truth. Hours passed, and the atmosphere grew heavier, as if the house itself were holding its breath. In the library, Lily discovered a leather-bound journal hidden beneath a pile of dusty books. She opened it carefully, revealing the faded handwriting of Lady Eleanor. Her entries spoke of love, longing, and the oppressive expectations of her family. As Lily read, she came across an entry that sent chills down her spine. "I fear for my life. There are dark forces at work within my family. I believe they are cursed. I can't escape this fate." Lily hurried to find Ben and Mia, clutching the journal tightly. "I found something." Eleanor knew about the curse. She thought it was tied to her family. Ben's eyes widened. Maybe that's why she and her family suffered so much. Mia frowned, glancing toward the door. "What do we do with this information?" "We need to confront the spirit," Lily replied, determination in her voice. "We can't leave until we help her find peace." As they made their way back to the room where Lily had first encountered the woman, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew colder, and the lights flickered ominously. "It's like the house knows we're here," Ben murmured. When they reached the room, Lily called out, "Please, if you can hear me, we want to help you." The temperature dropped dramatically, and the figure of the woman materialized before them, her expression one of hope mingled with sorrow. "You found the journal," she said, her voice echoing through the room. "Yes," Lily replied. "We want to help you break the curse." "What do we need to do?" "You must release the truth," the woman urged. "You must confront the spirits of the Blackwood family. Only then will they understand." Nestled atop a lonely hill overlooking a tranquil valley, Hawthorne Manor stood like a forgotten relic from a bygone era. Its once stately facade was now a tangle of vines, and the windows, long devoid of glass, gaped like hollow eyes watching the world below. The townsfolk spoke of the manor in hushed tones, recalling its history, a tapestry of love, betrayal, and an insidious curse that lingered in the shadows. Built in the late 1800s by the wealthy Hawthorne family, the manor was a symbol of prosperity. Alexander Hawthorne, a prosperous industrialist, and his beautiful wife, Clara, hosted lavish parties that dazzled the elite of society. The couple appeared to have it all: a perfect marriage, a thriving business, and a growing family. However, beneath the glittering surface lay a darkness that would soon consume them. The tragedy began when Clara gave birth to their first child, a daughter named Isabel. Though the birth was celebrated, the joy was short-lived. Clara fell gravely ill shortly after, suffering from a mysterious ailment that left her bedridden for months. Alexander sought the best doctors, but no one could discern the cause of her affliction. The townspeople whispered that Clara was cursed, for she had been seen conversing with a mysterious stranger who appeared on the estate just before her illness began. As Clara's health declined, Alexander became desperate. In his pursuit to save his beloved wife, he made a pact with a local herbalist rumored to possess mystical abilities. Under the cover of darkness, Alexander would sneak out to meet the herbalist, hoping to procure a remedy for Clara. However, what he received was far from a cure. One stormy night, with thunder rumbling ominously overhead, Alexander returned home with a vial containing a strange, glowing liquid. He believed it would save Clara. As he entered the manor, he found her lying weakly in bed, her face pale and gaunt. Desperate to restore her vitality, he administered the potion, praying it would bring her back to life. In that moment, the air crackled with tension, and the room filled with an unearthly glow. Clara's eyes opened wide, but not with the warmth of life. A chilling smile spread across her lips, and as she looked at Alexander, he felt a wave of dread wash over him. Clara rose from her bed, but she was no longer the woman he loved. Something dark had taken hold of her spirit. The townsfolk reported seeing Clara wandering the grounds of the manor at night, her once luminous beauty now a haunting visage cloaked in shadows. Alexander, horrified by what he had unleashed, grew paranoid. He locked himself away in his study, tormented by the guilt of his actions and the loss of his wife. As the days turned to weeks, Clara's transformation only deepened. She became a malevolent presence in the manor, her spirit twisted by the dark magic that had seeped into her being. Alexander, consumed by guilt and grief, spiraled into madness. He began to isolate himself from his family, and one fateful evening, he vanished from the manor without a trace. Isabel, now a young girl, was left to fend for herself. With her father gone and her mother lost to the darkness, the young girl sought solace in the mansion's abandoned halls. As the years passed, the once majestic home fell into disrepair, the beauty of its architecture obscured by neglect. Rumors spread through the village, and the manor became a place to avoid, an abode cursed by the shadows of its tragic past. Over time, Hawthorne Manor became a ghost story, with children daring each other to approach its decaying gates. The whispers of Clara's ghost lingered in the air, a mournful reminder of the love that had turned to tragedy. Despite its haunting reputation, the manor remained untouched, its secrets buried beneath layers of dust and sorrow. Many decades later, a curious young couple named Emma and Jake moved to the nearby town. They were drawn to the allure of old homes and the stories they held within their walls. When they stumbled upon Hawthorne Manor, they were captivated by its Gothic charm. Despite the townsfolk's warnings, they felt an undeniable connection to the place and decided to make it their own. As they began the arduous task of restoration, the couple soon discovered the lingering presence of the past. Emma often felt a chill in the air, a sense that someone was watching her. While working in the garden, she would catch fleeting glimpses of a figure moving among the shadows. Jake dismissed her fears, attributing them to the overactive imagination of a creative soul. But one night, as they settled into bed after a long day of renovations, Emma awoke to the sound of soft weeping echoing through the halls. Heart pounding, she sat up, listening intently. "Did you hear that?" she whispered to Jake. "Hear what?" he replied, groggy and unconcerned. Emma swung her legs over the side of the bed and stood, determined to investigate. It sounds like someone is crying. With the moonlight illuminating the darkened corridors, Emma ventured down the stairs, following the sound. As she reached the parlor, the weeping grew louder, wrapping around her like a shroud. She found herself drawn to a large, ornate mirror hanging on the wall, its surface fogged with age. In the reflection, she saw a woman standing behind her, a figure clad in a flowing white gown, her face obscured by shadows. Emma gasped, spinning around, but there was no one there. Heart racing, she returned to the mirror, her eyes searching for answers. "Who are you?" Emma whispered, feeling an inexplicable pull toward the reflection. The woman's voice, soft and sorrowful, floated through the air. "Help me. I am trapped." Emma stumbled back, fear coursing through her veins. "How can I help you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You must uncover the truth," the woman implored. "Only then can I find peace." Emma rushed back to the bedroom, waking Jake in a flurry of excitement and fear. "Jake, I think I saw a ghost. She says she's trapped." Jake sat up, rubbing his eyes. "What? A ghost? You've got to be kidding me." "I'm serious. I saw her in the mirror," Emma insisted. "We have to find out what happened here." Reluctantly, Jake agreed to help Emma uncover the history of Hawthorne Manor. They spent the next few days scouring old newspapers and records at the local library, piecing together the tragic story of the Hawthorne family. As they delved deeper, they learned of the fateful night when Clara had fallen ill and the events that followed. Emma's heart ached for the woman who had been lost to darkness, and she began to feel a profound connection to her spirit. One evening, after a long day of research, Emma proposed they perform a seance in the manor, hoping to communicate with Clara and gain insight into her suffering. Jake was hesitant but eventually agreed, wanting to support Emma's quest for answers. They set up a small table in the parlor, lit candles, and placed a photograph of Clara in the center. As they held hands, the atmosphere grew heavy, and the flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows on the walls. "Clara, if you can hear us, we wish to help you," Emma called out, her heart pounding with anticipation. For a moment, there was silence, and then the temperature in the room plummeted. A soft breeze swept through, causing the candles to flicker violently. Emma's pulse quickened as she felt a presence surround them, an energy that pulsed in the air. "Help me," a voice echoed, reverberating through the room. It was Clara's voice, filled with anguish. "I am bound by my past. What do you need from us?" Emma asked, her voice steady despite her fear. "Find the truth. Break the curse," Clara urged, her voice fading into the ether. As the seance concluded, Emma felt a renewed sense of purpose. She and Jake returned to their research, determined to uncover the remaining pieces of the puzzle. Days turned into weeks as they scoured old family letters and diaries, revealing hidden truths about the Hawthorne family. They discovered that Clara had indeed made a deal with dark forces to save her life, but the consequences had trapped her spirit within the manor. Finally, they stumbled upon a family heirloom, a locket containing a lock of Clara's hair and a faded photograph of her and Alexander together, filled with love and light. Emma held it tightly, feeling an overwhelming surge of emotion. "This is it," she said breathlessly. "This must be what she needs to find peace." That night, as the full moon cast silver light through the windows, Emma and Jake returned to the parlor, holding the locket. "Clara, we have something for you," Emma said softly. As they placed the locket on the table, a soft breeze swept through the room, and the candles flickered once more. The air shimmered, and Clara's ghostly figure materialized before them, her expression serene yet filled with longing. "Thank you," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "You have found my heart." In that moment, Emma felt the weight of Clara's sorrow lift. "You are free now, Clara," she said gently. "You don't have to be trapped anymore." As the light in the room intensified, Clara smiled, a radiant, ethereal glow. "I am free," she echoed, and with that, her spirit faded into the light, leaving behind a profound sense of peace. The atmosphere in Hawthorne Manor shifted. The once ominous presence Wraithwood Hall was a sprawling estate that loomed over the sleepy village of Eldridge. Nestled deep in the heart of an ancient forest, the mansion was infamous for its unsettling presence and the tragic tales that seemed to seep from its very walls. Locals whispered about the curse that plagued the estate, a curse born from betrayal, greed, and a desperate quest for power. The hall was built in the early 1800s by the wealthy Whitmore family, renowned for their extensive landholdings and ambitious ventures in trade. At the helm was Lord Henry Whitmore, a stern yet charismatic figure whose wealth was matched only by his insatiable ambition. His wife, Lady Margaret, was beloved by the townspeople, known for her kindness and generosity. Together, they seemed to embody the perfect family, but beneath the surface, turmoil brewed. Their only son, Edward, was a restless spirit. A brilliant scholar, he often spent his days lost in books, dreaming of far-off lands and grand adventures. As he reached adulthood, he grew disillusioned with his father's relentless pursuit of wealth and power, yearning instead for a life of purpose. When Edward fell in love with a local girl, Eliza, it only deepened the rift between him and his father. Henry disapproved of the match, seeing Eliza as nothing more than a distraction, a peasant unworthy of his son. He demanded that Edward abandon his dreams and marry a woman of noble lineage, someone who could elevate the family's status. But Edward was defiant, choosing love over duty. This act of rebellion ignited a fierce conflict within the Whitmore household, one that would have devastating consequences. One stormy night, tensions reached a breaking point. An argument erupted between father and son, echoing through the grand halls of Wraithwood. Words were exchanged, harsh and unforgiving, until in a moment of rage, Henry declared that Edward was no longer his son. With that final pronouncement, Edward stormed out, vowing never to return. Heartbroken and furious, Henry sought revenge. In the days that followed, he devised a plan to sabotage Edward's relationship with Eliza. He spread malicious rumors about her, painting her as a deceitful woman seeking to exploit Edward's affections. When Edward discovered his father's betrayal, he was devastated. He returned to Wraithwood, demanding the truth from Henry. The confrontation was fierce, and in a fit of rage, Henry lashed out, accusing Edward of betraying the family name. In a moment of desperation, Edward made a fateful choice. He challenged his father to a duel, a matter of honor that would decide the fate of their relationship. The duel took place at dawn, in the forest surrounding Wraithwood Hall. The air was thick with tension as the two men faced each other, weapons drawn. But the conflict was not merely a physical battle. It was a clash of ideals, a struggle for freedom against tyranny. In the heat of the moment, as swords clashed, tragedy struck. Edward, overwhelmed by emotion, lost his footing and fell. Henry, unable to stop in time, accidentally struck a fatal blow. With his son's lifeless body at his feet, Henry was consumed by grief. He fled the scene, haunted by the consequences of his actions. In the days that followed, he shut himself away in Wraithwood Hall, a broken man tormented by guilt and regret. Lady Margaret, devastated by the loss of her son, fell into a deep depression, retreating from the world. The once vibrant estate became a mausoleum, filled with sorrow and despair. As the years passed, rumors began to circulate about the curse that enveloped Wraithwood. Locals claimed that on stormy nights, the cries of Edward could be heard echoing through the halls, a ghostly reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded. Visitors to the estate spoke of cold spots, flickering lights, and the unsettling sensation of being watched. The Whitmore family had become a cautionary tale, a testament to the destructive power of greed and betrayal. By the time the next century rolled around, Wraithwood Hall stood abandoned, a shell of its former self. Nature had begun to reclaim the land, vines creeping up the walls and trees encroaching upon the estate. Despite its dilapidated state, it continued to draw the curiosity of thrill-seekers and paranormal enthusiasts alike. Among them was a young couple, Sarah and Tom, who had long been fascinated by the lore of Wraithwood Hall. They had spent years researching its history, poring over old newspapers and town records, eager to uncover the truth behind the curse. One crisp autumn evening, Armed with flashlights and an insatiable curiosity, they set out to explore the estate. As they approached the mansion, the setting sun cast long shadows over the landscape, lending an eerie quality to the scene. Tom, ever the skeptic, chuckled nervously. "It's just an old house, right? I mean, how scary can it be?" Sarah shushed him, feeling a chill run down her spine. "Just remember what the locals said. We're not here to provoke anything. We just want to learn." Once inside, they were struck by the overwhelming sense of history that clung to the air. Dust motes danced in the beam of their flashlights as they wandered through the grand foyer, taking in the remnants of a life once filled with opulence. The faded wallpaper peeled from the walls, revealing bare wood beneath. Cobwebs hung like tattered curtains in the corners, and the floorboards creaked beneath their weight. As they explored, Sarah felt an odd sensation wash over her, a sense of being drawn to a particular room at the end of the hall. "Tom, come here," she called, motioning for him to follow. In the parlor, they found an ornate mirror, its surface clouded with dust. "Look at this," Sarah said, wiping away the grime. As she did, the mirror seemed to shimmer, and for a fleeting moment, she thought she saw a figure reflected behind her. A tall man in a dark coat, his face obscured. "Did you see that?" she gasped, spinning around. But there was nothing there. Tom rolled his eyes. "You're just imagining things. This place has been abandoned for decades. It's bound to play tricks on your mind." Undeterred, Sarah continued to inspect the room. As they searched through old books and trinkets, she stumbled upon a leather-bound journal hidden beneath a dusty table. The cover was cracked, and the pages yellowed with age. Intrigued, she opened it, her heart racing as she realized it belonged to Edward Whitmore. The journal chronicled Edward's tumultuous life, detailing his love for Eliza and the deepening rift with his father. As she read, she felt a growing connection to the young man, his pain echoing through the words. "Tom, come look at this," she called, her voice filled with excitement. As Tom leaned over her shoulder, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The temperature dropped, and a faint whisper seemed to drift through the air, barely audible. "Help me." Startled, Sarah glanced around, her heart pounding. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. "Probably just the wind," Tom replied, though he sounded uncertain. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. "We need to keep looking," she insisted, feeling a compulsion to uncover more of Edward's story. As they continued their search, they discovered hidden compartments in the walls, revealing dusty letters and family heirlooms. Each artifact told a piece of the Whitmore family's tragic tale. The more they uncovered, the more palpable the energy in the room became, as if the very walls were alive with the ghosts of the past. Suddenly, Sarah froze, her eyes drawn to the parlor door, which slowly creaked open. A cold breeze rushed through the room, extinguishing their flashlights. Darkness enveloped them, and panic surged through Sarah. "Tom, turn on your flashlight." But as Tom fumbled for his light, a figure emerged from the shadows. A tall man, dressed in clothing from another era, his face twisted in anguish. "Help me," he repeated, his voice echoing through the darkness. "Edward," Sarah whispered, recognizing him from the descriptions she had read in the journal. The apparition nodded, a desperate plea in his eyes. "I am trapped. You must help me find peace. What do you want from us?" Tom asked, his voice shaky. "Uncover the truth," Edward urged. "Confront my father's spirit. Only then can I be free." The air grew thick with tension as Edward's figure flickered, as if struggling to maintain its form. "Time is running out," he warned. "The curse must be broken." With that, he vanished into the shadows, leaving Sarah and Tom breathless and shaken. "Did we just see a ghost?" Tom asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We need to help him," Sarah said, her resolve strengthening. "He deserves to be free." They spent the next few hours piecing together Edward's story, unraveling the tangled threads of betrayal and sorrow. As dawn approached, they finally unearthed a hidden compartment in the library, containing a will penned by Henry Whitmore. The will revealed a shocking truth. Henry had intended to disinherit Edward entirely, leaving everything to a distant cousin, all while painting Edward as a disgraced member of the family. This revelation ignited a fire within Sarah. "This is what we need to confront," she said. "We can't let his father's actions condemn him forever." As they prepared for their final confrontation, a storm began to brew outside, thunder rumbling amid. Perched atop a windswept cliff overlooking the turbulent sea, Blackwood Manor was a majestic but decaying estate that seemed to harbor the weight of countless sorrows. Once a symbol of affluence and power, the manor had become a ghostly remnant of its former glory, cloaked in darkness and steeped in a tragic history that sent chills down the spines of the villagers below. The locals spoke in hushed tones about the curse that hung over Blackwood Manor, a curse born from love, loss, and unrelenting grief. The story began in the early 1800s, when the manor was constructed by Lord Jonathan Blackwood, a successful merchant known for his shrewd business acumen. He had amassed a fortune trading spices and textiles, and he poured his wealth into the creation of the grand estate. His wife, Lady Eleanor, was the light of his life, a woman of remarkable beauty and grace, beloved by all who knew her. Together, they seemed to embody the perfect union, their love a beacon of hope in a world filled with uncertainty. However, their idyllic life was shattered when tragedy struck. Eleanor became gravely ill with a mysterious disease that left her frail and weak. Lord Jonathan, desperate to save her, summoned the finest physicians and healers from far and wide, but none could discern the cause of her affliction. As Eleanor's condition worsened, the once vibrant halls of Blackwood Manor echoed with despair. In his desperation, Jonathan turned to an ancient text that had long been buried in the annals of history. The book spoke of dark rituals and powerful spells, promising healing for those willing to pay the price. With no other option, Jonathan made a fateful decision. He would summon a dark force to save his beloved wife. Under the cloak of night, he gathered the necessary ingredients and prepared the ritual in the manor's grand parlor, a place that once echoed with laughter and love. As he completed the incantation, a chilling wind swept through the room, extinguishing the candles and plunging the manor into darkness. In that moment, Jonathan felt a surge of energy, an otherworldly force enveloping him as he sensed the presence of something far more sinister than he had anticipated. "Bring her back to me," he cried, his voice breaking with desperation. But instead of a response, a chilling silence fell upon the room, and the air grew thick with dread. Days passed, and to Jonathan's astonishment, Eleanor's health began to improve. She regained her strength, her cheeks flushed with color, and for a brief moment, joy returned to Blackwood Manor. However, the happiness was short-lived, as strange occurrences began to plague the estate. Shadows flickered in the corners of the rooms, whispers echoed through the halls, and an oppressive feeling settled over the manor. Despite her newfound vitality, Eleanor was no longer the same. A darkness lurked behind her eyes, and she began to speak in riddles, her mind seemingly ensnared by the very forces Jonathan had summoned. Concerned, Jonathan sought the guidance of local wise women and scholars, desperate to understand what had happened to his beloved. It was then that he learned the truth. He had not merely healed Eleanor, but had bound her soul to the dark forces he had invoked. She was a vessel for the malevolent spirit, cursed to wander the manor forevermore. Realizing the grave mistake he had made, Jonathan sought to reverse the ritual, but it was too late. The bond was unbreakable. In a fit of despair, Jonathan attempted to confront the dark entity that had taken hold of his wife. He returned to the ancient text, desperate to find a way to free her. However, the words had changed, twisting into a language he could no longer comprehend. In his frustration, he became consumed by madness, his love for Eleanor morphing into an obsession that drove him to the brink. One fateful night, in a final act of desperation, Jonathan gathered all of Eleanor's possessions, hoping to sever the bond between them. He set fire to the parlor, intending to release her from the curse. As flames engulfed the room, he cried out for her, believing that love would conquer all. But the fire raged beyond his control, consuming everything in its path. When the villagers arrived at dawn, they found the charred remains of Blackwood Manor. Jonathan was gone, lost to the flames, and Eleanor's body was nowhere to be found. From that day forward, the manor was abandoned, a haunting reminder of the tragic love story that had unfolded within its walls. As the years passed, tales of the manor's haunting spread through the village, and locals spoke of the spirit of Eleanor, cursed to roam the ashes of her former home, forever searching for the love she had lost. They claimed to hear her weeping on stormy nights, her cries mingling with the sound of the crashing waves below. By the late 1800s, Blackwood Manor had become a place of fear and superstition. Those brave enough to venture close would report strange sightings, glimpses of a woman in white wandering the grounds, her long hair trailing behind her like wisps of smoke. Shadows danced in the windows, and the oppressive feeling of despair hung in the air, discouraging anyone from attempting to restore the once majestic estate. In the 20th century, a group of adventurous souls, led by a young couple named Mia and David, decided to explore Blackwood Manor. They had grown up hearing the stories of its haunting, and their curiosity outweighed any fears they had. Armed with flashlights, a camera, and a shared sense of adventure, they made their way to the manor one crisp autumn evening. As they approached the decaying structure, the wind howled around them, and the air grew heavy with anticipation. The manor loomed above them, its broken windows like empty eyes staring into the void. "This place is creepy," Mia whispered, her voice barely audible. "Creepy is good," David replied, grinning. "Let's see if we can find anything interesting." Once inside, they were struck by the overwhelming sense of history that clung to the air. Dust motes danced in the beams of their flashlights as they wandered through the grand foyer, taking in the remnants of a life once filled with opulence. The walls were adorned with peeling wallpaper, and the floor creaked beneath their weight. As they explored, they found themselves drawn to the grand parlor, the very room where Jonathan had performed the fateful ritual. Mia's heart raced as she approached the fireplace, noticing the charred remains of old furniture scattered about. "This must be where it all happened," she said, her voice tinged with awe. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through the room, causing Mia to shiver. "Did you feel that?" she asked, turning to David, who was examining a dusty portrait hanging on the wall. "Feel what?" he replied, barely paying attention. "It's like someone is here," she said, her eyes scanning the dimly lit corners of the room. David shrugged, but Mia couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As they continued to explore the manor, strange occurrences began to unfold. Doors creaked open on their own, shadows flickered at the edges of their vision, and an unsettling sense of unease settled over them. Finally, they ventured into the upstairs chambers, where the air grew thicker, heavy with the weight of the past. As they entered one of the bedrooms, Mia gasped at the sight of an antique mirror, its surface clouded with age. She approached it, feeling an inexplicable pull. "Hey, come check this out," she called to David, who reluctantly followed. As she wiped away the dust, the mirror seemed to shimmer, and for a fleeting moment, she thought she saw a figure standing behind her. A woman in a flowing white gown, her face a mask of sorrow. "No, it can't be," Mia gasped, stepping back in disbelief. "What?" David asked, glancing over her shoulder. "Did you see something?" "Just a trick of the light," she stammered, though deep down, she knew there was more to it. As they continued their exploration, the sense of despair grew palpable, enveloping them like a shroud. Mia could hear whispers echoing through the halls, faint but persistent. "Help me," a voice seemed to call, sending chills down her spine. "Mia, are you okay?" David asked, concern etched on his face. "I'm fine," she replied, though her heart raced with fear. I feel like we're not alone." They pressed on, determined to uncover the truth behind the manor's haunting. Eventually, they stumbled upon an old library filled with dusty tomes and forgotten treasures. Among the books, Mia discovered an ancient journal, its pages yellowed and brittle. "What's that?" David asked, peering over her shoulder. "It looks like it belonged to Jonathan Blackwood," Mia said, excitement bubbling within her. "It might explain what happened here." As she read the journal aloud, the chilling tale of love and loss unfolded before them, the words weaving a tragic narrative that captured their hearts. They learned of Jonathan's desperate attempts to save Eleanor, his spiraling descent into madness, and the catastrophic fire that consumed the manor. Mia's eyes widened as she reached the final entry, written in a shaky hand. "I can feel the darkness closing in around me," she read, her voice trembling. "Eleanor, forgive me for what I have done. I cannot bear to live with this guilt. I will release you from your torment." Just then, a sudden chill filled the room, and the journal slipped from Mia's hands, landing open on the floor. Nestled at the edge of a forgotten forest, Briar Hollow was a once grand estate that had fallen into disrepair, its beauty eclipsed by the darkness of its past. The locals in the nearby town of Eldersfield spoke of the place in whispers, cautioning against venturing too close, for it was said that the very ground was cursed. An air of mystery and sorrow surrounded Briar Hollow, where the echoes of laughter had long since been replaced by whispers of tragedy. The history of Briar Hollow began with the Ainsworth family, who built the estate in the late 1800s. James Ainsworth, a wealthy industrialist, was known for his keen business sense and philanthropic endeavors. He and his wife, Lydia, had 2 children, a son named Thomas and a daughter named Emily. Their family was regarded as pillars of the community, and their home was often filled with the sounds of merriment and joy. However, as the years passed, the shadow of misfortune began to loom over Briar Hollow. Thomas, the elder son, was a spirited young man with dreams of becoming a painter. He spent countless hours in the manor's expansive gardens, sketching the landscapes that surrounded them. But his artistic ambitions were met with disapproval from his father, who wanted him to follow in his footsteps and take over the family business. This constant pressure drove a wedge between father and son, igniting a simmering resentment. Emily, the gentle and kind-hearted sister, tried to mediate the growing tensions. She often accompanied Thomas on his walks through the gardens, offering encouragement and support. "You must follow your heart, Thomas," she would say. "Art is where your passion lies, not in the family business." But as Thomas continued to defy his father's wishes, the rift deepened. In a fit of anger, James confronted his son one fateful evening, declaring that he would disinherit him if he did not abandon his dreams of becoming an artist. The argument escalated, and in a moment of rage, Thomas stormed out of the manor, vowing never to return. The following days were filled with tension and despair. James, filled with pride and stubbornness, refused to apologize, while Lydia's heart ached for her children. It was then that tragedy struck. Thomas, distraught over the conflict with his father, took refuge in the woods surrounding Briar Hollow. On a cold, foggy night, he wandered deeper into the forest than ever before, lost in thought. As the hours passed, a storm rolled in, unleashing torrential rain and fierce winds. In the chaos, Thomas slipped and fell into a ravine, his cries swallowed by the storm. The next morning, a search party was formed, but it was too late. They found him lifeless at the bottom of the ravine, a tragic casualty of the family's discord. When the news reached Briar Hollow, the estate was plunged into an overwhelming grief. James, filled with guilt and remorse, could hardly bear the weight of his actions. He had lost his son over a trivial disagreement, and now he was haunted by the thought of what could have been. In his sorrow, he retreated into himself, shutting Lydia and Emily out. Emily, devastated by her brother's death, wandered the gardens in a haze of despair. The vibrant flowers that once brought her joy now seemed dull and lifeless, reflecting the sorrow that had enveloped Briar Hollow. Her heartache turned to obsession as she sought solace in the memories of her brother, often speaking to him as if he were still alive. "I wish you were here, Thomas. I miss you so much," she would whisper to the wind. As the months turned into years, the estate fell into a state of decay, mirroring the disintegration of the Ainsworth family. James died shortly after Thomas's funeral, his spirit broken by guilt. Lydia, unable to cope with the loss of her husband and son, succumbed to illness, leaving Emily alone in the decaying mansion. In her grief, Emily became a recluse, rarely seen by the townspeople. Rumors spread that she had gone mad, lost in her sorrow. Locals claimed to hear her mournful cries drifting through the night, echoing the pain of a family torn apart by tragedy. Briar Hollow, once a place of joy, had transformed into a hollow shell, haunted by the specters of its past. As the years passed, the estate became overgrown with weeds and ivy, swallowed by nature. The townsfolk shunned it, fearing the dark energy that lingered within its walls. Briar Hollow was said to be cursed, a place where the spirits of the Ainsworth family roamed, forever trapped in their sorrow. By the mid-20th century, a group of thrill-seeking urban explorers, drawn by the tales of the haunted manor, decided to investigate the estate. Among them were a young couple, Lisa and Mark, who had grown up hearing the ghost stories that surrounded Briar Hollow. Intrigued by the prospect of uncovering the truth, they gathered their friends and set out for the estate one fateful evening. As they approached the crumbling entrance, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. The air grew thick with anticipation, and a sense of unease settled over the group. "Are you sure we should be doing this?" Lisa asked, hesitating at the gate. "Come on, it'll be fun," Mark replied, his excitement infectious. "We'll explore the manor and see if the stories are true." With a shared sense of adventure, they ventured inside, their flashlights illuminating the darkened halls. Dust hung in the air, and the scent of mildew lingered. As they moved through the manor, they were struck by the remnants of its former grandeur. Faded portraits lining the walls, ornate chandeliers hanging precariously from the ceiling, and furniture draped in white sheets like ghosts of the past. As they explored, they soon realized they were not alone. Strange occurrences began to unfold. Cold drafts swept through the halls, whispers echoed in the darkness, and shadows flitted at the edges of their vision. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine as she caught sight of a figure in the corner of her eye, but when she turned, there was nothing there. "Did you see that?" she whispered to Mark, her heart racing. "See what?" he replied, oblivious to the presence that had unsettled her. Undeterred, they pressed on, determined to uncover the truth behind the legends. As they ventured deeper into the manor, they stumbled upon the grand parlor, where the tragic confrontation between Thomas and James had taken place. The air in the room felt charged, and Lisa could sense the weight of sorrow that lingered. "This must be where it all happened," she said softly, feeling the history seep into her bones. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the upstairs hallway, causing them all to jump. "What was that?" one of their friends exclaimed, panic creeping into their voice. "Let's go check it out," Mark suggested, his curiosity piqued. As they climbed the staircase, the atmosphere grew heavier, and an unsettling silence enveloped them. They entered a dimly lit bedroom, and Lisa's breath caught in her throat. In the center of the room stood a mirror, its surface foggy and tarnished. "Look at this," she said, approaching it cautiously. As she wiped the glass, a figure appeared behind her, a young woman in a white gown, her face obscured by long, flowing hair. "Help me," the apparition whispered, her voice filled with sorrow. Lisa gasped, stumbling back in shock. "Did you see that?" she cried, turning to her friends, but they only stared in disbelief. Before anyone could respond, the ghostly figure vanished, leaving Lisa trembling in the silence of the room. "We need to get out of here," she said, her voice shaking. But before they could leave, a chill swept through the air, and the room began to tremble. The floorboards creaked ominously, and the lights flickered. "Something is not right," Mark said, his expression turning serious. In that moment, they felt a rush of energy, and the ghostly figure reappeared, this time more defined. It was Emily Ainsworth, her eyes filled with unshed tears. "You must help me," she implored, her voice echoing with a haunting sorrow. "I cannot find peace. What do you want from us?" Lisa asked, her heart racing. "Free my brother," Emily pleaded, her voice a fragile whisper. "He is trapped in the darkness." "What darkness?" Mark asked, confusion etched on his face. "The darkness of my father's guilt," Emily replied. "It binds him to this place. You must confront him and reveal the truth." As the energy in the room surged, the walls of the manor seemed to close in around them. The group huddled together, fear and uncertainty coursing through them. "We need to find a way to help her," Lisa urged. In a moment of clarity, they remembered the journal they had found earlier. "Maybe the answers are in the journal," Lisa suggested. "We need to find it With newfound determination, they rushed back down the stairs, retracing their steps to the library. As they frantically searched the room, Lisa finally spotted the journal, its pages fluttering as if beckoning them. "Here it is," she exclaimed, holding it aloft. As they gathered around, they began to read aloud the passages detailing the tragic history of the Ainsworth family. With each word, they felt the weight of Emily's sorrow lift slightly, as if the act of revealing the truth was breaking the chains that bound her. In the heart of a secluded valley, shrouded by dense forests and rolling hills, stood Hollow Hill Manor. The estate, once a vibrant gathering place for the elite, had fallen into disrepair, its walls whispering secrets of a dark past. The locals in the nearby village of Alderwood spoke of the manor with a mixture of fear and reverence, for it was said to be haunted by the souls of those who had suffered within its walls. Hollow Hill Manor was built in the late 1800s by the affluent Hawthorne family. Charles Hawthorne, a wealthy industrialist, and his wife, Margaret, envisioned the manor as a symbol of their status and a sanctuary for their growing family. They had 3 children: Eleanor, the delicate eldest daughter; Henry, a boisterous and ambitious son; and little Clara, whose laughter echoed through the halls like music. Life at Hollow Hill Manor was initially idyllic. The family hosted lavish parties, welcoming dignitaries and socialites who reveled in the grandeur of the estate. However, beneath the surface of wealth and privilege, the Hawthorne family was plagued by shadows of their own making. Charles was a stern man, consumed by ambition and power, often neglecting the emotional needs of his wife and children in pursuit of his business ventures. As the years passed, tensions mounted within the family. Eleanor felt the pressure of expectations, burdened by her father's desire for her to secure a prestigious marriage. Henry, eager to prove himself, grew resentful of his father's strict guidance, while Clara, yearning for affection, found solace in her imagination, retreating into her own world of fantasy. The laughter that once filled the halls began to fade, replaced by silent dinners and cold exchanges. Tragedy struck one fateful autumn evening during one of the family's grand parties. A storm rolled through the valley, and as the guests danced and mingled, a sudden clap of thunder echoed through the manor. In the chaos that ensued, Clara darted outside to play in the rain, oblivious to the danger. When Margaret noticed her absence, panic ensued. The storm intensified, and the family rushed to find their youngest daughter. In the frantic search, they discovered Clara lying unconscious at the bottom of a steep ravine, having slipped while trying to navigate the treacherous terrain. Despite the efforts of doctors and healers, Clara passed away, leaving a gaping wound in the hearts of the Hawthorne family. The once vibrant laughter that echoed through Hollow Hill Manor was replaced by a heavy silence, the air thick with grief and regret. Margaret, heartbroken and unable to cope with the loss of her beloved daughter, withdrew into a shell of despair. Her health deteriorated, and she spent her days wandering the empty halls of the manor, speaking to the memory of Clara as if she were still alive. Charles, overwhelmed by guilt for not being present during the tragedy, became increasingly withdrawn and angry, lashing out at his remaining children. The bond that once held the family together shattered under the weight of their collective grief. As months turned into years, the family's once prominent status in society crumbled. The lavish parties ceased, and the manor fell into disrepair, reflecting the emotional desolation within its walls. Rumors began to circulate in Alderwood about the cursed nature of Hollow Hill Manor, with villagers claiming that the spirits of the Hawthorne family wandered the halls, trapped in their sorrow. By the time the early 1900s arrived, the manor was a shadow of its former self. Vines snaked up the sides of the building, and the gardens became overgrown with weeds. The townsfolk avoided the estate, believing that the darkness within it could seep into their lives. Some claimed to hear the faint sound of a child's laughter carried by the wind, while others swore they could see a figure of a woman in white roaming the grounds, forever searching for her lost daughter. As the decades passed, the legend of Hollow Hill Manor grew, drawing the attention of thrill seekers and ghost hunters from far and wide. In the 1970s, a group of college students, intrigued by the stories of the haunted estate, decided to spend a weekend exploring the manor. Among them were Jenna, a skeptic and aspiring journalist. Mark, her adventurous boyfriend. Sarah, a believer in the paranormal, and Dave, who loved a good scare. As they approached the crumbling facade of Hollow Hill Manor, Jenna felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting eerie shadows across the estate. "This place looks like it's straight out of a horror movie," Jenna said, eyeing the broken windows and sagging roof. "Perfect," Mark replied, grinning. "Let's see if we can capture some ghostly evidence." The group entered the manor, the heavy door creaking ominously as they pushed it open. Dust motes danced in the air, illuminated by the beams of their flashlights. The silence was deafening, and every creak of the floorboards seemed to echo through the empty halls. They explored the rooms, finding remnants of the past. Faded photographs, old furniture draped in sheets, and cobwebs that clung to every corner. As they ventured deeper into the manor, Sarah's excitement grew. "I can feel the energy in here. There's definitely something supernatural about this place," she declared, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. "Or it could just be the old unsettling," Jenna replied, trying to temper Sarah's enthusiasm. "Let's not jump to conclusions." The group made their way to the grand parlor, where they discovered a dusty piano in the corner. Mark couldn't resist the urge to play a few notes, his fingers dancing over the keys. As the sound reverberated through the room, a chill swept over them, causing Jenna to shiver. "Did you feel that?" she asked, glancing at her friends. "Feel what?" Mark replied, oblivious to the sensation. "Nothing," Jenna said, brushing it off, but deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. As night fell, the group gathered in the parlor, setting up their equipment to document any paranormal activity. They shared ghost stories, laughter mingling with nervous energy. Just as they settled in, a loud crash echoed from upstairs, causing them all to jump. "What was that?" Sarah exclaimed, wide-eyed. "Probably just an old beam giving way," Dave said, though he sounded less convinced. "We should check it out," Mark suggested, his adventurous spirit overriding any sense of caution. Reluctantly, the group climbed the staircase, the wood creaking beneath their weight. They reached the second floor, and the air grew thick with anticipation. As they approached the bedroom at the end of the hall, Jenna felt a sudden chill wash over her, an instinctive urge to turn back. "Guys, maybe we should just go back," she said, hesitating at the door. "Don't be such a chicken," Mark teased, nudging her forward. With a sigh, Jenna pushed the door open, revealing a dimly lit room filled with antique furniture and remnants of a forgotten past. The atmosphere felt heavy, as if the air itself held the weight of countless sorrows. As they explored the room, Jenna's flashlight beam fell upon a large mirror hanging on the wall. Its surface was cloudy, but as she wiped away the dust, she caught a glimpse of something moving behind her, a fleeting shadow that vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Did you see that?" Jenna gasped, turning to her friends. "See what?" Mark asked, looking puzzled. "I swear I just saw something in the mirror," she replied, her heart racing. "Relax, it's just your imagination," Dave said, though his voice trembled slightly. Suddenly, Sarah gasped, pointing towards the far corner of the room. "Look, there's someone standing there." The group turned, and Jenna's heart dropped as she saw a figure. A woman in a long white dress, her hair cascading over her shoulders, standing silently in the shadows. The room seemed to grow colder, and the figure's gaze was fixed on them, her expression one of deep sorrow. "Who are you?" Sarah called out, her voice trembling. The figure raised a hand, as if reaching out to them, but then faded away, leaving only silence in her wake. The group stood frozen, shock and disbelief etched on their faces. "We need to get out of here," Jenna urged, panic creeping into her voice. "No way. This is amazing," Mark exclaimed, his excitement overshadowing the fear. "We have to investigate further." Reluctantly, the group continued their exploration, but Jenna's unease only grew. They descended to the grand parlor, hoping to regain their composure. As they gathered in a circle, they could feel the energy in the room shifting, the air thick with tension. "Maybe we should try to communicate with her," Sarah suggested. "We could use a Ouija board." Jenna hesitated. feeling an instinctive pull to leave. "I don't think that's a good idea. We don't know what we're dealing with." But before she could voice her concerns, Mark had already produced a makeshift Ouija board from a piece of cardboard. The group gathered around, placing their fingers on the planchette. "Is anyone here with us?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. For a moment, nothing happened. The room felt heavy with silence, and Jenna's heart raced as she sensed an unseen presence watching them. But then, the planchette began to move, gliding across the board with an eerie grace. "Why, yes," it spelled out. "What's your name?" Sarah asked, her eyes wide with excitement. The planchette moved again. In the quaint town of Brackenridge, hidden behind tall, overgrown hedges and nestled among the gnarled branches of ancient trees, stood Eldridge Manor. Once a jewel of the community, the manor had become a relic of a bygone era, its grandeur obscured by the shadows of its tumultuous past. Rumors of curses and hauntings swirled around Eldridge Manor, warning townsfolk to steer clear of its decaying walls. Eldridge Manor was built in the late 1800s by the wealthy Eldridge family, known for their lavish parties and philanthropic efforts. Jonathan Eldridge, a prosperous businessman, and his wife, Isabel, had 2 children, a son named Samuel and a daughter named Clara. The family was deeply involved in the community, and their home was a gathering place for the elite. However, beneath the surface of charm and affluence lay hidden tragedies that would forever alter the course of their lives. Samuel was the apple of his father's eye, destined to inherit the family fortune and continue the Eldridge legacy. Clara, on the other hand, was an artistic soul, more interested in painting and literature than the rigid expectations of society. Despite their differing interests, the siblings shared a strong bond, spending hours exploring the vast gardens and dreaming of a world beyond their gilded cage. As time passed, Samuel grew restless under his father's strict expectations. Desiring freedom and adventure, he often argued with Jonathan, who insisted that he take over the family business. Their disagreements grew more intense, leading to a rift that threatened to tear the family apart. In contrast, Clara watched helplessly as her brother spiraled into frustration and resentment. One fateful evening, during a grand party held in honor of a visiting dignitary, a tragic accident would change everything. Amidst the laughter and music, Samuel decided to sneak away to the nearby woods, seeking solace and freedom. He climbed the garden wall, intending to venture into the darkness for a moment of peace. Unfortunately, as he made his way through the dense underbrush, he slipped and fell into a hidden ravine. When Clara noticed her brother's absence, her heart raced with concern. She searched for him in the garden, calling his name, but the commotion of the party drowned her out. It wasn't until later that night, when the festivities had quieted, that Samuel's absence was truly felt. Panic swept through the Eldridge family as they organized a search party, desperately scouring the woods for any sign of him. As dawn broke, a searcher stumbled upon Samuel's lifeless body at the bottom of the ravine, and the world of Eldridge Manor shattered in an instant. Clara was inconsolable, her heart heavy with guilt for not having stopped him from leaving the party. Jonathan, consumed by grief and regret, became a shell of the man he once was, his anger directed at the world for having taken his son away. Isabel, too, was heartbroken, her spirit crushed by the loss of her beloved child. In the weeks that followed, the manor became a place of mourning. Clara retreated into herself, spending hours painting portraits of her brother, trying to capture the essence of his spirit. Jonathan's anger turned inward, and he isolated himself from his family, poring over business affairs in an attempt to escape his grief. Isabel, overwhelmed by sorrow, wandered the halls, clutching Samuel's belongings, unable to accept the loss. As time passed, the atmosphere in Eldridge Manor became increasingly oppressive. The once lively gatherings turned into hushed conversations and avoided glances. The townsfolk began to whisper about the curse that had befallen the family, warning that Samuel's spirit could not rest until the truth of his tragic fate was uncovered. One stormy night, Clara, feeling a powerful connection to her brother, ventured into the garden, desperate to feel his presence one last time. She found herself at the edge of the ravine, where Samuel had fallen. As the rain poured down, Clara knelt beside the edge, tears streaming down her face as she called out for her brother. "Samuel, please forgive me," she cried into the night. "I should have stopped you. I should have been there for you." In that moment, a chilling wind swept through the trees, and Clara felt an icy hand touch her shoulder. She turned, and for the briefest of moments, she saw the outline of her brother standing beside her, a sorrowful expression on his face. "Clara," he whispered, his voice a haunting echo. "Help me." Overwhelmed with grief and despair, Clara staggered backward, falling to her knees. "How can I help you, Samuel? What do you need?" "Uncover the truth," he urged, before fading back into the shadows. The next morning, Clara awoke with renewed purpose. She spent hours poring over old family records and letters, searching for clues that could reveal the truth behind Samuel's death. As she sifted through dusty archives in the attic, she stumbled upon a hidden compartment within her father's desk. Inside, she found a collection of letters exchanged between her father and a business associate, revealing a dark secret. Samuel had been involved in a dangerous business deal, one that had gone terribly wrong. Clara felt her heart race as she read the letters. It became clear that her father had known about Samuel's risky venture, but had chosen to keep it hidden. The weight of the truth crashed down on her. Samuel had died not only because of the accident, but also because of the pressure and expectations placed upon him by their father. Fueled by determination, Clara confronted Jonathan, laying bare the letters and the truth about Samuel's death. "You knew, Father. You knew about the risks he was taking, and you didn't stop him," she cried, her voice shaking with anger and pain. Jonathan's face paled as he realized the truth had come to light. "I did what I thought was best for our family," he stammered, his voice weak. "I wanted to protect him. By forcing him into a life he hated, you failed him." Clara's voice echoed through the empty halls, her anger a cathartic release for the pain that had consumed her for so long. As Clara spoke, a strange energy filled the room. The atmosphere shifted, and she could feel Samuel's presence growing stronger. The walls of Eldridge Manor seemed to tremble as if the house itself were reacting to the unearthing of the truth. Suddenly, a chilling gust of wind swept through the room, knocking over a vase and sending it crashing to the ground. In that moment, Clara understood. Samuel's spirit had been bound to the manor, trapped by the weight of unspoken truths and unresolved emotions. "You need to let go, Father," she urged. "You must release the burden of your guilt." Jonathan, his face a mask of grief, nodded slowly. "I understand now. I've held on to this pain for far too long." With tears streaming down his face, he whispered a prayer of forgiveness, releasing the guilt that had plagued him for years. As he did, a profound silence fell over Eldridge Manor. The air grew lighter, and Clara felt Samuel's spirit begin to lift, his essence no longer trapped by the weight of unfulfilled dreams. She closed her eyes, feeling a warmth envelop her, a sense of peace washing over her. Days turned into weeks, and as the seasons changed, so did the atmosphere of the manor. The oppressive darkness that had lingered for so long began to lift, and the walls that had once echoed with sorrow now resonated with hope and renewal. Clara took up her brush and painted again, creating vibrant landscapes filled with light and life. Despite the lingering echoes of the past, Eldridge Manor began to transform. The townsfolk, curious about the changes, began to visit the estate, drawn by the warmth emanating from within. Clara and Jonathan welcomed them with open arms, sharing stories of their family and the lessons learned through tragedy. One evening, as Clara stood in the garden where Samuel had fallen, she felt a gentle breeze brush against her cheek. She closed her eyes, inhaling the sweet scent of blooming flowers. In that moment, she sensed Samuel's presence beside her, a soft smile on his face. "Thank you, Clara," he whispered, his voice a soothing melody. "I can finally rest." Clara smiled through her tears, feeling a sense of closure that had long eluded her. She knew that while the past could never be changed, they had the power to shape their future. With each brushstroke, she painted a brighter world, one that honored her brother's memory while allowing the light of hope to shine through. As the years passed, Eldridge Manor became a symbol of resilience and healing in the community. The family who had once been shrouded in darkness had embraced their past and transformed it into a legacy of love and forgiveness. The stories of Samuel and Clara became part of the town's folklore, reminding all who heard them of the importance of honesty, compassion, and the enduring bonds of family. Visitors to the manor often remarked on the warm atmosphere, the feeling of peace that enveloped them as they stepped through the threshold. The shadows that had once haunted the halls were replaced by laughter and joy, echoing the spirit of a family that had triumphed over tragedy. And so, Eldridge Manor stood tall, a testament to the power of love, forgiveness, and the light that can emerge from even the darkest of histories. As Clara continued to paint, her heart filled with gratitude. She knew that Samuel would always be with her, his spirit woven into the very fabric of their home. The curse of Eldridge Manor had been lifted, and in its place bloomed a legacy of hope, forever inspiring those who entered its doors.